All right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Matrix Dialogues. It's me, your host, Austin Boozer. I am here today with Mr. Patrick Shelley, a guy I've known since I was 14. Long time. And Patrick really has been impactful to me in the way of even when he was very much younger. Still, kind of, I come from an environment that wasn't very success oriented or goal oriented at all, and even Patrick in his early 20s was kind of a beacon for that for me to kind of continue to be the curious, inquisitive human being that I am, as I've talked about a lot on this show. For anyone that's listened, curiosity. A lot of people see me as a super driven or hyper focused on success, and maybe, but always the lead domino for me has always been curiosity. Can I do a podcast? Can I be this fit? Can I run that fast? Can I major in this? Can I be good at this thing? And it's always just that curiosity. And once that goes, then everything else is very easy to put in sync. But seeing someone have that direction and that willingness, it was new to me at that point in my life, and it made me go, like maybe there is more to me than there is today. And well, how can I find that out? Well, I can try to pursue it. And so, I really try. As I've become more successful in my life, and I go to therapy every week for some other life issues and whatnot, but have really delved into like understanding myself more and like where did some of these things come from, and seeing some of those behaviors in you, like I told you, really, I can fundamentally like track them all the way back to like, it made me go, like, so these are the kind of things that someone can do. And then as I've continued to like, stay close with your family and Peyton and your mom, and I've heard about your continued success throughout your life, it's continued to challenge me. And like, anytime I've been like, maybe I just can't do it, or maybe this isn't it. It's like, I know someone in real life who is doing it. I actually know that person, versus like, oh yeah, I see all these people who are successful, but like, I don't know them. Like maybe they came from a better scenario or had an advantage. But with you, it's like, no, like just a normal dude too. Like he's got a good family, but like he's created those opportunities for himself so that it can be done. And I want to do that. So even if it's not in the same ways you did, like you had a big impact on me on the potential to think that those ideas or those outcomes, that lifestyle was even attainable. So
that's awesome.
I'm appreciative and grateful for that. So thank you, Mr. Patrick Shelley, everyone. My God, I can't even speak today. How you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Appreciate it.
So we'll just jump into it. So you studied at UT finance and econ, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe. Kind of what, and then I don't know much about this is the only part that even with all my diligence and research, I even asked your brother a little bit. He gave me some vagueness to it, but so when you first graduated and then moved on to the corporate world, I think you said you worked for Allegiance or Alliance or someone.
Yeah. So I worked for like a corporate tax company out of college. So when I was at UT, I was trying to think about what were good jobs to get, and consulting was a top 10 field to go into.
Yes.
And it's so funny. The things that sound so great to you when you're in school,
suck.
Yeah,
they're the worst.
Yeah. So you're thinking, I never traveled. I think I left Texas 3 times in my whole life. And so I thought, oh man, you get to go all over the country and work for a consulting firm. And I was like, man, that sounds great. So I started doing like research development credits, and I came out and I was doing that for a year. And then I went to direct energy for about 6 months and then moved out to Los Angeles. And the reason I moved out to LA is because when I was at UT Austin, I did an internship for Northwestern Mutual.
Okay.
And I Googled online one day, and what are the top 10 internships to get? And it was like a top 10 internship. And so I started working in Houston, and they had this conference in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Well, I was walking down the street, I had this UT shirt on, and this cocktail waitress ran up to me and she goes, oh my God, I love UT. I love Austin. Let me show you around town for 3 days. And it's like, I don't know anybody here. That sounds great.
Yeah.
So I went out with her, and the last night we were there, her roommate was hanging out with this guy who's doing the same conference I was, who went to USC. And we just partied like it was Vegas and Milwaukee that night. Like
I quit shit in Milwaukee either.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I quit drinking when I was 25, but this was back when I was drinking. And so we partied late and stuff. And we broed out, and he's always telling me to come out to LA. So he was like, hey man, we do limo, bottle service in Hollywood, $20 a person. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, this sounds great. I want to go out there. She's like, listen, if it sounds too good to be true, it's probably yeah. So she goes, you're going to get out there and he's going to stick you with like a $2,000 bill. So if you call me, I'm not paying for it. So I was like, okay, well, I waited till I got out of school and I started working. And I finally went out to LA, and one of his buddies, his dad owned some of their clubs in Hollywood. That's how they, got hooked up with it. But went out in LA, had this great time. met a bunch of his buddies from UCLA. And this one guy I met, he was dating this girl who's now his wife, and they have 2 kids together. But I met him, and then we were on his roof drinking until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just like broing out. I like just met him like 6 hours before. He's like, "Hey man, come over." So they have a house in Santa Barbara, and his family is like one of the biggest founders in Silicon Valley. I didn't know this at the time, but so he's like, "Hey, we have these 2 beach houses in Santa Barbara. You should come out for July 4th." So I go out there for July 4th, and there's like all these really big tech people out there. It's like this beautiful house. We're all like hiking every day on the beach. This is like my second time to California. And then the big founder in Silicon Valley, his birthday and my birthday, the exact same day. So then I left LA, and then I went back to LA for his birthday. And then they have a ranch in Half Moon Bay. So I went out there, and I maybe went out there like 7 times or so in like the first year. And they started coming to Austin. I took them to like a football game. We were all hanging out. And we just, built this great friendship. Well, his sister got into Harvard Business School and for MBA. And she calls me and she's like, "Hey, look, you're really great, but you haven't been anywhere. You haven't done a whole lot." She's like, "You need to kind of explore and expand your horizons." She goes, "I think you do really well in Los Angeles, so you should quit your job and move out here." I was like, "Well, this girl's got into Harvard Business School, so she's not dumb." Yeah. So we talked for like 3 hours, and I went in the next day. I watched this video from Jeff Bezos talking about regret minimization theory and how you always regret the things the shots you don't take. Yeah. And
never the ones you do.
Yeah. So I took my parents to dinner. My dad told me it was a terrible idea to go out there. And I was like, you know what, if I go out and fail, that's fine. But I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. So then I moved out there, and it was a rough 4 or 5 months for sure. But yeah, it ended up being a great decision. But yeah, it took a while to adjust. But that's how I ended up in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Did you have anything that, first of all, we need to discuss whoever writes these, like these are the best companies to get an internship at or something, needs to be like cut their head off publicly or stoned or something.
Yeah, I mean, I
these
think
companies are always shit to work for in hindsight.
Terrible. Yeah, and it's so funny because I think the companies are actually paying these publications to put them on the list.
100%. Yeah, because I'm like, I talked to 100 people here. No one likes their job.
Yeah.
How is this the best place to get an internship at? Anyway, was there any moment as you were, either in internships or in your or early in your professional career that you kind of had this idea of any entrepreneurial endeavors, or kind of like, because I want to be clear with that, because I think that the appeal is always great. Like, you ask anybody who wants to be fit, right? Who wants to be rich? Like, okay, do you want to do the work to do that? It's like, so was there anything like, I think the people who can be successful as you have in entrepreneurial work is a combination of the intelligence and the desire and the whatever, but also then pursuing or doing things that they actually find value and impact in.
I think a common theme that you'll kind of hear from me throughout the whole podcast is that a lot of my life has been from great people that I have been fortunate to meet, who have kind of opened up kind of what we're talking about, the world of opportunities that I would never have thought was possible. As we continue to talk, like I'll tell you a lot of things I've done that I thought was not even possible to do. And when I was in college, it was like junior year, my one of my best friends, his dad was a really successful entrepreneur in oil and gas. And I remember I was sitting down with him in the pool one day, and he lived in like the Royal Oaks area. Really, really great family, super cool guy. And I was sitting down, and he's like, "Yeah, so next year you're going to get out of school and you're going to get a job." And he goes, "Let me tell you what's going to happen. You're going to go on your first vacation. Halfway through that vacation, you're going to get sad." I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Because your vacation's almost over." and he goes, "Guess what? If you build a company and you build a successful company and you build a great life," he goes, "when I go on vacation, I never have to come home." He goes, "I can go wherever I want, whenever I want, however I want." I was like, "I want that."
That sounds so great.
I was like,
that's powerful though. I mean, because everything he says there is true, but it's so like, be it that early 20s and someone like bestowing that wisdom on you who's got the proof of it. Like, hey, I can get on a plane and go wherever I want tomorrow and stay for however long I want and know that I've got people running a business and a company that's going to make me plenty of money to where I can do this for as long as I want.
Sure. Yeah. And a lot of his friends were enormously successful entrepreneurs, built, huge companies that if I said the names, you'd be like, a lot of people have heard of them. So I was kind of, around some of these groups. A lot of people were building these businesses. And I was like, it's not even so much the lifestyle. I think it's more so just the freedom, the flexibility, the securities, I think is a big thing that most people want. and also just pursuing something that, you have this idea in your head and you're like, let's get it out there. So, I kind of was always in me. And I think after I got out of school, when I did that first job out of school, I was like, okay, cool. I learned a little bit of a consulting. I actually started a company that I still own to this day. I started it when I was like 26. So I've had the business for about 9 years. And so I think it's just kind of like, hey, I'm looking at like kind of what we were talking about earlier is like, you look at all these other people doing it. You're like, well, I can do that. Why not take a little shot and protect, obviously, entrepreneurship, a lot of it is like downside risk protection. So how can I protect my downside where I can, have asymmetric risk reward, where I can have this massive upside potential, protect my downside, and, take shots on goal. Cause you could have one thing that returns like, a lifetime of value. So I think I was always kind of looking at that and thinking, how can I structure my life to achieve some of those goals that I want to achieve? Yeah. And also too, I looked at some of these guys and, they were obviously much older. I think I was 20, they were 55, something like that at the time. But I was looking at like what I had done and what they had done. And I was like, okay, well, they have traveled the world, married, kids, big business, done this, done that, and I hadn't done anything. I hadn't been anywhere. I haven't read all these books and doing all this stuff. So it's like, okay, well, like here's where they are and here's where I'm at. Like I think their life is amazing. And like, how do I bridge that gap? Right. So Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, always has this is like inversion principle where you always like, you always take like, okay, what's the end goal and how do I work backwards from that? Yep. And so I just kind of thought, I was like, okay, cool. Well, if I start traveling a little bit, unfortunately I got a very fortunate situation with that, but if I started traveling a little bit, and I started like kind of doing things, I was like, okay, well, if I can achieve some of these goals and I can, be the person that I think, I want to become. Right. Mm-hmm. So, I just, chipping away a little every day at it. It can be, I don't want to say depressing, but like sad in a way sometimes because it's like the gap seems so far. Like when I was in college to where they were at, it seemed like an unattainable.
Yeah, like you could like, if you were on a boat, it's like, I can see a landmass over there, but like, I'm never going to make it.
Yeah. I'm never going to. Yeah. So it just seemed unattainable. And it was very overwhelming. I've never been like an envious person. I've always been super happy for people, particularly because a lot of people, there's a misconception on wealth, right? So like 90%, 80 to 90% of millionaires are self-made. Particularly like in China, it's like 99%, if you look at a lot of developing countries, it's like everybody's self-made. So a lot of people came from rough conditions or middle-class families or like poor families and like worked their way up. Yeah. And so I think it's hard to be envious of those people because you're like, hey, like, respect. Yeah, you went to bat for 3 decades, 4 decades to get where you're at. Just a lot of respect for that. So, but I was always just like, wow, maybe I'll never be able to get there. So it was quite a large divide between how I, the position I was in and them. And I was just like, okay, well, this looks like an amazing life. How do I achieve that? So that's what I kind of started focusing on. And I think you kind of look at different pieces of your life and you start putting it together. But yeah, it takes a while to.
Yeah. I can relate to a couple of things you said there. One, the inversion theory. I think that's hearing that. I heard that for the first time. I was probably 16. Yeah. And again, just in that like peak stage of my life of like really, as we have already discussed, like just challenging the idea. Mm-hmm. Like, why? Like, does it have to be like that? Like, my family has never made very much money or like been very successful. Like, why? Like, why is that? And well, I know there's people who do. Like, they make money, so it's like, what, are they better than us? Like, no, I don't think they're better than us, but like, they're leveraging themselves in a different way. Mm-hmm. So just again, like I initiated earlier, like the curiosity of like running through, and then once I heard that concept, it was like, that's how I've built everything in my life. Mm-hmm. Now it's like, could I have a podcast? Okay, great. Well, what do you need to run a podcast? Like, work backwards. Okay, well, mm-hmm. I need lights, I need cameras, I need mics, I need somebody to talk to, because nobody wants to listen to one person talk forever, and no one's got that much shit to say. They're not that valuable. So, okay, cool. So then, like, again, like working, like you said, working backwards to everything. But then, and then also to that comment on it feeling so far away. When I was in the Army,
so you went in like right after high school?
Yeah, okay. yeah. Right after high school, I joined, and after my first deployment to Afghanistan that year, I think I made $32,000.
How was Afghanistan?
It's beautiful, actually. It really is a beauty. Like it's a quite mountainous place. If you're unfamiliar, for those who haven't been, it's quite mountainous. Despite it being very like, it's a very rich ecosystem there. A lot of people think it's just like this desert, but there's quite a lot of greenery as well. Oh, wow. And very mountainous. And in the spring, post like snow melting, it's very green.
Iran is like that as well. I have a lot of Persian friends, and they talk about how it's actually similar to California in certain ways.
Yeah, very, very beautiful. But I remember seeing that, and I even thought like the path to like $100,000 was like, oh man, I make $32,000 this year. 100 grand seems like that's triple what I made, you know. And then now here I'm on the upside of still not that much collectively, more than a lot of people, sure, but I know I have goals that are much larger than that. And so the thought of $1 million or 10 million or, you know, one day like 100 million still feels like, oh my God, how am I ever going to get there? You know, and like you said, it's this like slow chip of like doing things when you don't see a result. And like, even when you're maybe not, when you're unsure, you're uncertain, like, and like you said, I never regret the things that I do. I always regret the shots I don't take. Because if I do it and it fails or it falls apart or doesn't work, it's like, oh, great. Okay. Like I tried, it just didn't work out. You know, especially if you genuinely take a real effort, like put some effort in and make a real attempt. I think a lot of people say they try, but they half-ass it and they know it. And that's why they have the regret. If you genuinely make a true effort to something, you don't have that because you're like, hey, I put everything I had into it. This is what shook out from it. But also, like you said, it could also lead to the biggest upswing of your life. You know, you never know. But if you're too hesitant to like you'll never get the upside reward.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, you know, I go back and forth because like financial resources is great, but if you really study the most successful people in history, you know, Churchill, Lincoln, Gandhi, Jesus never traveled more than 150 miles from like where he was born, right? You know, a lot of the most successful people in history like were not wealthy. Einstein, Newton, you know, so you know, I think, you know, there's a lot of emphasis in today's culture to put all your value on your net worth. But I actually like to compare it more as a societal worth component. Because I think if I give you an example of a guy who is no family, no kids, alone, doesn't have a lot of friends, and like just goes to Astros games by himself and he's worth $10 million, or a guy who has 4 kids, really close with his family, great wife, you know, like all his kids are turned out great, grandkids, great hobbies that he enjoys, but he has $3 million. Which life are you taking? Right. Everyone. So then that goes against the point of like, how important is money? Well, you know, it's important because you want to be able to like provide opportunities for your family, for your kids, for yourself. But I do think sometimes people isolate so much just on that one metric. And it's like, or if you look at what I call societal worth, you know, like what are your personal relationships like? What are your family relationships like? What kind of hobbies do you have? Like what kind of stuff?
How much of life do you enjoy?
Yeah, because I mean, I know some people who are, you know, wealthy, extraordinarily wealthy, miserable. And miserable. Yeah. And you know, you hear this story all the time, right? I mean, all the time, you know, people
champagne problems, right?
People are talking about how they have friends who are like miserable, you know, it's just, and I think it's because they didn't develop, because it takes so much intensity to get to those numbers, right? You have so much focus. And so what happens is because you're so focused, everything else dissipates. Exactly. And so you lose sight of like your health, you lose sight of your personal relationships, your wife, your kids, your family. And so that causes a lot of other chaos throughout your life. And so, you rose to the mountaintop in this one area, but then, you know,
everything else was
you sacrificed everything. Right. So, you know, if you would have gone 80% or 70% or 60% of where you're at, I mean, that's still
how much better could your total life have been?
Yeah. And so, you need people like Musk who push the absolute boundary every single day and are willing to sacrifice a lot in his personal life to do that. Obviously he's doing unbelievable, remarkable things. And you need people like that. But, you know, even Elon says like people who think they want to be me probably actually really wouldn't want to be me. Yeah. He's like,
they don't know.
Yeah. They don't know. Yeah. It's a hard life. And so I think people I think societal value is a better description. I think people need to kind of take their life and look at it. And honestly, I do this with myself. I'm like, okay, you know, am I achieving all the goals in all the different areas that I want to do? Do I have great friends? Am I living the life that I want to live? And I think that's super important. I think if you just isolate on one area, and also too, I think I see is that when you have that one area that you're focused on, right? I look at it kind of like a chair. You know, if you have 4 or 5 legs in a chair, 6 legs, 7 legs in a chair, if one of the legs gets chopped off, the chair is still going to be okay, right? But the issue that I see is that when people have one leg, right, they're sitting here trying to balance in this one leg, right? And they're already so fragile. Yeah. And then let's say they have a work issue, or let's say something like that happens. Yeah. Their whole life gets knocked out.
Exactly.
So if you have a lot of different great stuff going for you, and you don't have to be like the best in the world at everything, but you have some great stuff in your life. Well, then if one thing isn't going well, yeah, you're sad, but it's not like this critical thing that's ruining your life.
Your life doesn't fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, you touched a lot of stuff there. I love one is that the people who have always been the the best in regard, whether that be Jesus, Martin Luther King, Gandhi, like we could go down this list of people who have been amazing. It's because they've provided more to society than they have gotten in return. Right. And so it's always
but not on a financial level, right?
Yes, yes. I'm saying like money now in the current, resource signaling, whatever the case is like, that's the thing that people are putting all the value
in the social media world. That's
right. It's how much money, what's the big, how big's your boat, how big's your home, whatever. But yeah, it's the people who find the most fulfillment. And I've recognized this thankfully young, and it appears you have as well, as like, even with the idea that I told you about before we started, it's like, it's not even about me. Like it's about, hey, I want to shore up this thing for everyone else. I want other people to feel more confident in this thing that we all do. It's not about me. I actually talked to two of my friends about it. And one of their first questions was like, well, how does it make money? And I was like, I don't know. Like, because it wasn't even a thing about it. It was like, I'm sure there is a way, but like, until a couple days ago,
it seemed to work for Mark Zuckerberg. He wasn't thinking about money.
I didn't think about it at all. And I was like, after the third person asked me, I was like, well, fuck, maybe I should see if there's a way for it to make money. But that wasn't like I bet if I do this, I'll make money. Right? It was like, I want to be able to provide value and meaning and usefulness to someone else.
But I think there's always a way to it might be challenging. It might not be the home run grand slam, triple billion-dollar company that you want, right? But at the end of the day, if that goes back to the point of how much do you really need? What is going to do the things that make you happy? Like if you're doing something that adds more value to society.
Yeah, level of fulfillment outweighs wealth, I think, at a certain level.
Yeah, like one of my ex-girlfriends is a neurosurgeon, and neurosurgeons do well. They make like $1 million a year, but every single one of them I talk to, they're like, if you're just doing this for money, there is a million things that you can do
to make more money.
Yeah, because it's like 7 years of residency where I'm working 90, 100, 110 hour weeks, right? No, like barely any vacation. Go through medical school, grad school, all this stuff. You have all this debt. And then you get out at 35, 36, 37, and then it's like you start your life. Yeah, again, you're making good money. But I mean, if I just wanted to make money, I would go do something else. They're not doing it for that. They're doing it because they're like, I feel like I'm helping people.
Yeah. They have passion and a personal investment to it.
100%. If you look at the people who really like transformed civilization, it's really the politicians, the inventors, and the entrepreneurs, right? And it's entrepreneurship is like, I would say it's the most replaceable of all three because there's always going to be a Rockefeller or Carnegie or someone who's out there like willing to make money. But it's the innovators to me who are the most admirable because like they're doing the things that there's not a massive financial incentive for them to do it. They're doing it just because they love it and they feel like they're improving people's lives. And I think that to me is like the most admirable part of our civilization.
Are you familiar with Arthur Brooks?
I've heard of him. Yeah.
Okay. So he has a whole study he's done on this is to the comment you made about why I think it's the proof the biology of why people ascertain so much value to the money thing. And it's because if you come from a situation I did where we were on food stamps and just money was not of a thing. Like everything was a short, like everything in life was around the shortage of money. And so until this is something I had to realize with my own life. But anyway, he does this graph of money and happiness are directly correlated for as long as money is solving your money problems. When it's like, I can't afford my rent or I don't have enough food for my family or like, but then once you cross that threshold, whatever that amount is, money no longer directly buys happiness anymore.
Yeah. I've seen some conflicting studies on this. I used to read stuff that like once you made 90 grand a year, that money didn't matter. There's a lot of new data that shows that actually isn't true.
Yeah. Cause 90 grand here versus 90 grand in New York is a holistically different lifestyle.
Like, I mean, I think if you're in LA and you want to have 2 kids,
you need money.
You got to make $600-700 grand a year. Yeah. I mean, it's so, if you want to live in a decent part of town where your kids can actually play outside and you're not worried
at school.
Yeah. You're not worried that they're going to get kidnapped. Like, it's super expensive. Yeah. And so, I do think, obviously, look, everyone wants to do well. Everyone wants to be able to, because it's not even about the cat. It's about what it does for you.
What it does for you. The freedom it provides to you.
Exactly. You can see the world. You can,
give your family comfort.
100%. Yeah. It's all those things. And so I think, again, those are great things. I'm not saying that money's bad by any stretch of imagination. It's great.
But there is more.
But when people just isolate on that one thing, I think the reason also people do it is one, we live in an Instagram world, right? Where people are trying to be as flashy as they possibly can. And secondly, it's a measurable thing, right?
Yeah,
like if you're like,
it is the most measurable thing we have in society.
Right. So if you're like, hey, well,
how good of a person are you?
Yeah. You can't measure. Right. I have 500 friends. Like that means everything to me. Well,
great.
People can't measure it. So
$500 million. Like, oh shit.
Right. So it's something that's measurable. So it's kind of like a way to ascertain quote unquote value. Yeah. But again, if it was, I look at money as kind of like water, right? If you don't have it, you're going to die.
Yeah.
But it's not going to make you happy. right? Like if you're drinking water all day, you're not like, oh yeah, my life's great. You know,
you don't not want a Sprite
right.
or a tea, right? You're like, I mean,
right.
hey, this was it. I mean, this will do.
Right.
But like, there's other things that are still great.
Exactly. So I mean, yes, it's super important. We should all strive to do as well as we possibly can. But I think there's a lot of different aspects of life that are super important. So, and I think it's hard to be great at a lot of things. I always
think.
Yeah, I mean, I've really pushed the boundary in a lot of different areas over my life. And I tell people all the time, like, I feel like I'm always failing. Like, no matter how good my life is or how great or the things I've accomplished, I always feel like I'm actually falling behind because I'm pushing the boundary in so many different things. And it's constantly frustrating. It's super tiring. I know that you want to talk about the entrepreneurship thing, but
yeah. No. I mean, I love this stuff because it's where I live too. There's I've seen it described as there's like as we mentioned earlier too, the cost for a certain complexity of mind. I always, even with this, when people are like, oh, that episode was so great, I'm like, that sucked. Like this didn't go right, that didn't go right. And like they don't see all that. They just see, oh, like, hey, you have a podcast that I can go on Spotify and wow, that's you. You're there. That's and I'm like, yeah, but that was fucking shit. Like the mic was messed up, or like the fucking footage looked like shit, or but no one sees all that, right? So I think that's like you're seeing it from the doer, right? You have the full 360 view, but everyone else only just has like a 2-dimensional perception to it.
Right.
And so to them, it's like, dude, you're fucking winning, you're crushing it. But you internally are like, but I got that and that, and then I can find a million of aspects of it that failed or that came up short or that didn't go the way I wanted it to. And
I think that's how life is enjoyable though, because if you are stressing about everything all the time, right? The nice thing is like when you go get lunch somewhere, if you go into the kitchen, there's probably craziness happening, right? They're like, it's like, it's insane back there. You're just like, exactly. Yeah. Like, because when you do your job or whatever you're doing in your life, it's always so stressful. You need to be able to go somewhere and like have somebody else deal with their stress, right? Yes. Like we're all kind of dealing with that stress to make life enjoyable. Yeah. And so it's nice just to be able to go to a restaurant, have somebody else stress. And then, like you said, you get the end product. And then whenever you're stressing to try to make the world better for them.
Exactly.
And that's actually why, look, I get if you're doing like very physically demanding jobs that, retirement for sure. But in a cognitive world, I never understood retirement because I always kind of look at it as like, okay, well, every day I wake up and I go to the shower, like somebody had to, make sure that the water was going through and like the electricity had to come on. Like civilization is like this constantly flowing thing and evolving thing. And I think, it's so interesting because you work your whole life from, let's say 22, if you get out of school up till 65, right? And then you develop all this knowledge and skill set and intelligence and wisdom through the decades. And then right when you like max out, again, physically you're not in the best shape, but you max out on your intellectual wisdom and then you just leave the workforce. I'm like, hey, maybe we should take reduced roles, not work as much, but still add value to civilization because those are the people who are actually best to be able to teach the next generation. Yes. And for them to just completely leave, I think is a huge, it's a detriment to society. So, every day you wake up there, people are doing stuff for you. And I think one of the most beautiful things is like that you do stuff for other people, right? We're all kind of helping each other, working together. And I think that's how you have the best societies that I've seen around the world for sure.
No, I agree. Yeah. I'm often plagued by the idea of people have said, even my mom recently is like, do you think you'll ever stop? And I said, why though? Yeah. I love it, and it's just because to your comment there is like, just because you took a shower yesterday doesn't mean you don't need to take a shower today. Arnold Schwarzenegger says, just because I went to the gym yesterday doesn't mean I don't need to go again today. Right. Just because I did work yesterday doesn't mean there's not work to do tomorrow. Yeah. And I don't think at any point, whether now I'll be 30 this year and, but even double it. And I think I don't see that portion of my identity or perspective altering by much. If anything, it'll probably just become more of that, where it's like, how much more can I squeeze out of myself because I'll get smarter, I'll get more wisdom, more perspective, more understanding through more repetitions in life.
Yeah. I hear, I'm kind of moving towards having kids relatively soon. And everyone tells me that once that happens, that you do change a lot and that this, as you get older, especially when you have a family, you kind of want to spend more time with your kids and spend more time with them. So, again, I'm not saying everyone needs to work 70 hours a week when they're 65, but, stay engaged, help the younger generation would be awesome. I think that would be super valuable and something that, we should encourage more of. If you hate your job and hate doing what you're doing, sure, maybe you can go do something differently, but to have that wisdom and to impart that onto the next generation, I think is super.
Yeah. I think that's why that's another component I'm insanely bullish on is I think why society took a long time to develop because we didn't have the wisdom from older people being passed down. Right? People dying at 35 or 40.
28 was the life expectancy.
Right, so it's like, well, like how much are we imparting then? Like, it's like, we're all doing that. Like I'm repeating the attempts you made to the thing because you didn't live to be 60 to tell me, hey, no, I already tried that. That's not it. And here's why it's not it. And I've done it. And so I can play it out for you step by step by step. I know what you're going to try and do. That doesn't work. Try something else.
Well, look at all the most successful people like, Benjamin Franklin. I mean, they lived to like 80. I think, and back then that was extraordinary.
Yeah, that was huge.
Like how many other great innovators did we lose?
Just due to,
think about the Holocaust, right? I mean, if you look at the Jewish population, they're about 0.2% of the global population, about 25% of all Nobel Prize winners, right? So how many Einsteins
did we whack off during that time?
Yeah.
Not whack off in a good way. Like,
how many great innovators or people did we lose during that time that could have changed the world? I mean, to your point, civilization was a lot different back then.
Yeah.
I mean, infant mortality rates, the chance of living to 5 years old, I think was, 30%, 40% of people died.
Even until a little over 100 years ago, like even until like 1907, to like infant mortality rate was almost over 35%.
Yeah, which is crazy.
1 in 3, basically. Like if you had 3 kids, like one wasn't making it to 5.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you read Lincoln's biography, it's like mom died, sister died, kids died. I mean, everyone died, right? Everyone. And it's just the amount of pain that people used to go through back in the day versus what we have to deal with now. Again, I think it's like we went through too much pain, right? And now we're probably a little bit too soft.
Too little.
No, there are certain things, terrible things that happen to people, for sure. But I think we've kind of gotten a little bit too soft there. And, hopefully we continue to have, radical transformation with AI over the next 20, 30 years. But, what does that look like and how do people respond to that? It kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, I mean, I do think the world's getting better all the time. There's a great book, and it's called Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. And it kind of talks about all these things that we're talking about, how just, 500 years ago since the Enlightenment in Europe, how things have really radically improved. And I think people, if you watch the news, everyone's always talking about how bad things are. Obviously, there's a psychological principle behind that, negativity. But yeah, I mean, the world is getting a lot better, and it's getting a lot better in a lot of different places. That doesn't mean it's still not great. There's a lot of places where it's not great. More of the world than
not still is not living like we're living. Right? I mean, 64% of the world's still underdeveloped.
So the median income around the world is $2,900 a year. So that means that 4 billion people make less than that. The top 1%, which is about $1 million net worth or higher, there's about 50 million of those people. They own about half the world and total assets. So yeah, the bottom 50% owns less than 1%. So there's an extreme disparity.
100%.
I mean, if you're in Switzerland and then you fly to sub-Saharan Africa, like the difference between those two civilizations is
night and day.
It couldn't be more extreme, right? And so, yeah, I mean, the world has a long way to go. But if you look at
where it's been,
where it was been,
it's like everywhere was like this before.
100%. And like if you look at life expectancies, like the developing countries are actually catching up to the developed world. There's been rapid progress. I think I'm actually really optimistic about this stuff.
No, I agree. I think a lot of people like to say the world's such a bad place. I'm like, well, compared to what? Like, if you look, do you know any history? Do you have any historical visual prowess? Because it's been pretty wild before.
That's their argument for not having kids.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I don't want to bring a kid into this world. I'm like,
what? The best it's ever done.
I'm like, what do you mean? Literally just you spent like a month in Europe this summer. You're coming back and you're like on the beach in LA. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm like, this world's amazing. Like,
yeah, that's great. And like you said, we're constantly continuing to challenge it and try and make it better and try to make it better for more people continuously. And then kind of what you said there too is the negativity bias. I got 2 things on that. One of them is it's always easier to recollect negative things than positive. Like as people, we have a natural discrepancy to negative emotion versus positive. I think that's also why people like you and I, also it's like, I'm always failing. I'm always fucking it up. Like I could get 100 things right, but I have a stack of 500 wrongs and I'll look at that 500 wrongs before I'll give myself one little for the hundreds of things I have right.
But you won't make those same mistakes again. That's
you won't, exactly. but then also, like you said, for people on the news, they're like, oh, the world is a mess. And it's like, but like what you seek, you find. If you look for shitty things, there's always shitty. We have such a plethora of information available to us at our fingertips due to social media and technological advances with our phones. And, so if you want to find something to be upset about, like, fuck, just get on Google, something to be upset about, like, and you'll have 1 million hits on something to piss you off, whether it's something even in your own community. Right. So it's like, we see these people with this, some people are like, oh, have this negativity or pessimistic bias to the world. And it's because they have the ability, that's one of the, again, I call them unintended consequences of technology is if you're someone who naturally, what's the behavioral trait tied to negativity? Oh God, my brain, if you can't intercept it in yourself, has just aided and enabled you to now find negativity all the time. Like why do people get stuck in this, as we alluded to also, I call it like the negativity trap, like the cycle of just like bad, awful. It's like, because they can get it all they want all the time,
Yeah. And the statistics can be, how you tell the story of statistics changes how you look at it. So for example, there's like 65 million people displaced around the world right now, which is the most ever. But as a percentage of the global population, it's the smallest ever. So it's how you look at that data.
I tell people this all the time. It's like when I see a graph, and the apex of it, it's like 51, and then they're comparing 51 to 55, and it's like, look how big the discrepancy is. It's like, yeah, but now start the axis at 0, and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Right. So it's like, even within, yes, the data isn't fudged, I can make it look holistically different by just changing the axis start point.
For sure.
Right. And so I think, again, like look how ahead the lead is. It's like, well, that's a 3%. It's almost nothing.
Yeah.
We just zoomed this out, I wouldn't be able to even tell.
Right.
So yeah, like there is a huge component of how you tell the story of any statistical based information, and what are the inputs and the variables, because and this is what I tell people as a data scientist, is like, what is the key attribute to success? Like, what is the, so many people have studied, like, what's the lead indicator of success? Is it, who you hang around, the socioeconomic, like the kind of, some people said that the Harvard study shows like the zip code you grow up around, right? If you grew up in a more monetary, it's like, okay, yeah, but boil that down. There's other variable inputs to that. But as you said, that clearly can't be true, because as we said, about 90% of people who have wealth are the first person to create it. It didn't come from
it. It's so funny. A lot of people, they're like, oh, he's a trust fund kid. So 75% of the second generation
piss it off,
lose all of it.
Yep.
95% by the third generation.
Yeah.
So
it's guaranteed.
It's very much a skill set, and if you're resourceful as a person, that's how you create resources, right? And what's actually interesting, if you look at dating, a lot of people think that, like particularly with women, that they primarily focus on money. And that's actually not true. What the data shows is that if you have like a quadrant, right, of a guy who not resourceful, no money, a guy who has money but not resourceful, the guy who is resourceful, no money, and the guy who has money and resourcefulness.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, they're going to pick the guy who is resourceful with money, right? But they actually would take the guy who's resourceful with no money over the guy who's not resourceful with money.
With money, yes.
Because they can lose the resources. So
it's actually resourcefulness is the key attribute.
And so that is, there's a combination of things between that. I mean, look, IQ is a big portion of this, right? And unfortunately, IQ is mostly hereditable. That definitely has an impact, but the number one indicator is grit, right? Or hunger, or whatever you want to call it. But like
desire,
drive. If you have that, you can, even if you're not born with the highest IQ,
your parents aren't wealthy,
you can do really, really well. And more well than someone who is born incredibly intelligent, but just has no drive.
Exactly.
And so I think as long as you can find a way to learn how to push yourself, I think you can have a really great life.
Yeah. And what I say is, my point with that is, if I blew that data out and removed the filters and the variables, the data is mute. Like is it your background, your family history, how much wealth you grew up around, how much knowledge you have, like you said, like the variable is always you. Like you said, how can you generate that in yourself to make it happen? That's it. That's the only variable that actually statistically does fit and proves true. Everything else, like when you open it up to a broad enough scope, like there's nothing in the data. Like there's no correlation. And so I say to say is like, yeah, data's great, and there's only going to be more of it, and we're only going to continue to use it more. But it's kind of like money; it's not the only thing.
Yeah.
Too much reliance or dependency on that thing is like, oh well, this is. I read this Harvard study that said people who grow up around successful people, like that's the lead indicator. It's like, yeah, but there's plenty of people who didn't come up from the right environment who are still successul. Like, so I can always beat the data.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. I mean, Howard Schultz, who founded Starbucks, lived in a very, very bad part of town.
Yeah. I love him. Great life story by him.
There's so many people. If you really think about it, though, the argument is flawed that you have to know successful people in order to be successful, because 500 years ago, nobody was successful.
Yeah.
No one. I think that's what people have forgotten. People talk about certain people having privilege or advantage or whatever. At a certain point in time, there was no success. Everything, and people are like, oh, well, they need education. There was no education. We created the education. We created the science. Look, obviously, I wouldn't say we created it. We discovered the science. We discovered the education.
Well, we set the metrics on the education that, like Harvard's a great school to go to, so Harvard could get you successful. It's like, well, there's a lot of people who didn't go to Harvard who are insanely more successful than people who did. So even that, the societal, box that we've put that in doesn't always like, you can refute that too, because like,
Sure.
well, not every CEO of a Fortune 500 company or entrepreneur who's made 7 figures went to Harvard. So you can't even say that it's education. Like, so we can, everything.
It just, all it does is increases the probability that you would get there just because you meet the people, and usually people will get in there. It's so selective that it's so hard to get into that it just is like, honestly, it's not even the education you get at Harvard. Yeah. It's just getting in.
It's a network that you have because
100%. Yeah. And so, yeah, but I think we people always have to remember at one point in time, there was no one who's successful, and everything that you see around you is like literally
because of those people.
Yeah, exactly. So we all created, invented, discovered all the things that are around us. And so, and none of these people had formal education. A lot of people didn't have formal education, and they were doing all the greatest things that we've ever seen done. And if you look at the Wright brothers, they weren't this
educated at all. Yeah.
They weren't this hotshot scientist group. And, there's actually another group of guys who all this money was getting funneled into. And
they had like college, they had gone to college, but were rather educated.
Like all this publicity and stuff. And I'm not sure I'm not sure about the Wright brothers if they actually went to school or not, but they were just tinkering in their garage, and they were the ones who discovered flight.
It's just a willingness, a curiosity.
Exactly. So it's a combination of things, but
you are the common denominator. You as the individual, how much you can drive that within yourself forward will be the indicator of how successful you can be. Because everything else you can gain friendships, you can make relations, you can build a network of successful people. You can live in a more successful zip code. You can you can gain all of these things after or with time. So it's like those things aren't it, but you are the thing that's always there. So I always tell people like, don't forget that you are the most important thing. Not even in this like, well, community, like you're special. Like, no. Like if you want to generate or create something that has value, then you're going to have to generate that value in yourself and then exude it outwards.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a compounding thing, right? It's like a snowball rolling down a hill, right? It just with time. With time you get more successful. You attract better, different kinds of people around you.
As you grow and become better, the people around you, like you attract what you are. People are like, how do I get around better people? It's like, we'll become a better person. Yeah,
and I think and you can do a lot of this stuff very cheaply, right? You can just,
especially now because it's so readily available.
Yeah, you can get a membership at Planet Fitness for $15 a month, and you can buy books online and
watch YouTube videos.
Yeah, you can take MIT classes for almost free.
Yeah,
there's really, it's never been easier to get educated or better at something or smarter than it is now. So yeah, I mean, it's a really amazing time to be alive.
Yeah, super blessed, and again, I think I constantly want to help people gain the perspective of like you said, that it's never been easier than right now to create a product, wealth, knowledge, perspective, and then it's never been easier to get the skills or the things you don't know.
Yeah, I think the big thing though is one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the stuff that I've done, I would have probably not thought was possible until I was kind of shown that it was possible. And so I think a lot of people do lack that. They need some kind of guidance to like, hey, you can do this. Like this is possible. This world is open to you. I do understand how some people, they feel like, oh, I'll never be able to achieve that because they don't even know like what's even possible out there. Right.
So they don't even have a model for it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what you said with that guy that you talked to, when you're in your early 20s and he's like, hey, you're going to be sad when your vacation's almost over. Or you could build a lifestyle and a level of success, whatever, monetarily and outside of that essentially you're always happy and fulfilled with.
Yeah. And I think that was 16 years ago for me when he told me that. And I still remember. So these little touch points that people who inspire you, you take them throughout your life. And I think that's incredibly valuable. But I think everyone just needs a little bit of like, hey, here's the way. And they need to just be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, oh, okay, cool. If I just keep walking, like I'll get there. But I do understand it's quite hard when you don't have that
it was light. Overwhelming and kind of insurmountable, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. And I felt the same way.
Yeah. Like we said, when I was like, hey man, I've made 30 grand. Like people are making 100 grand. You're making $1 million. Like, where's that at? Like, what is the, and then like to then invert that. What's the skill gap that if, if I'm here and there are people making that, how am I ever going to get that much knowledge, resources, competencies? Like, how does one go about that? You know? I think if you can just start, if you can take that step, whether you have the guidance or not, I think even still now, I'm just now really kind of getting acclimated and starting to be able to surround myself with people that you have, had the privilege to have access to for a good portion of time. But even when I didn't, even when I was unsure, it's just like, let's just take another step. like, because I live under the idea of what's the alternative. It's a good perspective.
Yeah, I know. It's like, yeah, you're gonna have to get up anyways.
Yeah,
tomorrow, and like you might as well push yourself. And I mean, none of us know how much time we have left, and you might as well enjoy the ride while you can.
Exactly.
And it's gonna be like poverty is hard, and being successful is hard. So it's like it's gonna be hard no matter what.
Yeah. Pick the hard you want.
Yeah, pick the hard you want.
Yeah,
right.
It's like, do you want, like, we mentioned those crazy innovators who maybe are shitty husbands or fathers, but but you need one of them to like revolutionize society.
Yeah,
for
sure.
And just as much as like, you need the guy who wants to be out of the office by 4 o'clock to go home to pick his 100%. Kids up, and like they're both valuable. But, but then you can't be that guy who's like, man, I wish I had $100 million. It's like, well, you could, but or it's the cost of it is maybe you don't get to go to all your kids' games. You don't get to take take time to practice every day. And if that's more important to you, then that's okay. But I always say that the what I believe is one of the most common problems that people face is because we do have this surplus of knowledge, information, and resources available to us now. People don't know what they want. If you know that you don't want to work that hard, that's okay. Then how hard are you willing to work to get as much as you can?
Sure.
Right? Like if you know, hey, when I have kids, I want to be able to go to every game and every practice and whatever. Well, then, hey, maybe the entrepreneur lifestyle, maybe it's not for you. Or do it and get it off the ground enough so that when it's already successful by the time you do have children, that you do have that luxury.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think if you look at people in the U.S., they've taken for granted the U.S., right? Like a lot of people until recently, I think 10, 15 years ago, only 15% of people had a passport. I think it's 45% now. So like more people are starting to travel.
Still low compared to every other country in the world, where it's upwards of 60 to 80%.
Only about 20% of the global population has been on an airplane.
No, but I'm saying if you go to like France, about 80% of the population has a passport versus in the US. Yeah, I think I saw something that was 67 as most recent.
I actually would think that was low because France is, it's like the size of Houston. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, right? It's like, so because the argument to that, I had my friend, he's from France. I had an episode with him and we talked about this is because he was like in America, no one had ever, like, he's like, none of my friends have passports. But I'm like, yeah, because I don't need a passport to go. I can get on a plane, go to California or Hawaii or New York. Yeah. I can see a whole different part of the world essentially,
right,
without needing that. I said, if you're from France or Germany or Belgium or something like that, like you can only go so far. You have to have a passport.
Well, yeah, that's my point. Is that in Houston you can drive 2 hours and still be in Houston. No, you're going from one end to the other, but in France, you can literally leave the country in 2 hours.
2 hours, yeah.
So. But for people to get out there and like see the world, I think you actually have a lot more appreciation for how fortunate we are to live here. And I think that's why you see so many people wanting to come to the Western country. They want to come to Australia. They want to come to the United Kingdom. They want to come to France because it is amazing. And we've built great civilizations. And I think, people really admire that. And so a lot of people who grew up here, they just don't appreciate it over time, what I've seen.
The discrepancy for those individuals is just that they simply lack the perspective. I was fortunate.
Yeah, they just need to be able to travel. But they need someone to kind of guide them, show them the world, things like that. My parents hadn't traveled much, and I think over the last 5-6 years, I've taken them to like 20 countries, and I've seen a significant change in their personality, how they look at the world, the things. The perspective is entirely different, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone just needs like a little bit, and I think we're starting to get to that point where people have more access to things. They're starting to be able to see the world and do different things, explore different cultures. Even with technology, you'll be able to like video game anyone around the world. Yeah. And, you talk to people from different parts of the world and you talk to them like, what are you doing? You get to hear their experience. Even those like small things I think are huge wins.
Yeah. Because you see the difference in perspective, but like, hey, what's even what are you doing today? You get to see what their priority of focus is.
Sure.
Right. Versus if you're like, I gotta go do some laundry. I guess I'll go get online and do some work, and log in and, you're like, versus they're like, oh man, like I had to like help my family, like, do whatever this morning, and like so that we can have money. You're like, oh shit, like, whoa, that's way different than what I'm doing. Yeah. Like you said, but what's underlining there is like the perspective of priority, and being, like I said, thankfully I was 20 and I went to Afghanistan for the first time, and it was like, whoa. I got to see like
that was cool.
I got to see what it was like to be a king, essentially. In areas of like Kabul and whatnot, and then how people lived in that, and their insanely large like compounds and with all the amenities. And then I saw dudes who were living in like shit huts. Yeah. And it was just so like from
Dubai is one of the best places to see that, because in Dubai,
you probably either, I've not been, I want to go, but I know it's either like you're the pinnacle of wealth or like you have nothing.
Yeah. So there's all this, it's horrible. They have all these Indian and Pakistani people come, right? They put them in these camps. They build these like massive buildings that, usually New York or Chicago architects design. And then they go over there and everyone floods there for no taxes.
Yeah.
And so you see these like massive, enormous, beautiful buildings. And then you go 20, 30 minutes away and there's like these camps of people living in conditions that are quite shocking.
Yeah.
And the disparity between that is, I think, one of the failures of human civilization. But yeah, it's quite sad to see. But I do think though that, eventually, like as things continue to progress and move on and time goes on, that, more and more people are going to live a great life.
100%.
And so I am really bullish for the future.
Yeah, no, agreed. I'm enjoying it. So I just want to say thank you for that. I guess I will go on this one kind of in a direction for resilience. Building and running a business can be like, essentially a roller coaster of things from like, hey, we're doing well to like, oh shit, like, is this going to be it? How do you personally handle the emotional highs and lows of entrepreneurship? And do you have any strategies that you use to manage or maintain your like mental state during that time?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurship is very much a genetic thing. I do not think it's a learned thing. I think you either have to be wired that way or you're not wired that way.
Okay.
I have talked to a lot of people in all different parts of the world, and I would say 90 to 95% of entrepreneurs agree. It's either who you are or it's not. Now, I do encourage everyone to try it.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if it's who you are, if it's not who you are.
Until you take a shot.
Until you take a shot, right? So everybody should take a shot. They should try to minimize their risk when they take the shot. But yes, it's very much, it's like a nature versus nurture thing. I think in this certain instance, it's definitely more nature. I've kind of always been like the gunslinger, obviously trying to mitigate the risk, right? But I'm more of like, hey, let's start something. Let's try something. I have this cool idea. Let's do it. And sometimes it works and sometimes you're like, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. Like you look back on it, you're like, yeah, fuck, that was dumb. Like,
that was quite challenging. And the problem that I have is that I go into a lot of different industries. So if you look at like what I'm doing now, I'm in like 4 different verticals.
Yes.
And that is exhausting because you're trying to build knowledge, expertise. You're trying to recruit a team and all these different industries and like, hey, I don't know how to hire for this. I don't know how to hire for this. And that's already hard enough to do in one company, but to do in 4 companies
that have no commonalities.
Is extremely challenging. Like if you look at what Musk is doing, Musk is like kind of all within, tech, right? And yeah, maybe it's more like on the manufacturing side versus software side, but it's all engineering.
Yeah.
So
he's able to kind of plug and play some of the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Strategic advantages to be successful. Yeah.
100%. So, I don't know if it was a mistake, but it definitely messes with you to do that. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that for most people because it's quite taxing and it really like just getting one company to go and to be successful and to like give you a great life is hard enough. To do it. Yeah, I have 4 companies right now to do that over and over and over again. Again, I probably wouldn't recommend it. So yeah, it's quite taxing and it takes a lot out of you. I think one company just takes a lot out of you.
Yeah.
So
I know you're a fan of Alex Hormozi. I know I see his books on your reading list.
Mm-hmm.
And he says like anything can make $100 million. But if you're so many people, like you said, will take the approach of, oh, I see Musk. He's got this diverse portfolio now. It's like, yeah, but he got there first initially and just jamming that one thing.
Yeah. Concentration.
Yeah. And then it was like, okay, now I'm here. Like you said, now I need to really like mitigate risk.
Yeah.
Because I'm so focused here. I need something to diversify me and make me less open to risk. And so many people will think I need to start off that way. And so it's like, yeah, you're pursuing 4 things and any 4 of them could work, but you need to really hammer one to get it going initially, because the people who are going to beat you are just doing that. They're just only at the start looking at one thing. And so you trying to solely from like ground zero to.
I wouldn't recommend that. I mean, I started out with one company and then stuff started coming up. I started doing investments. I started acquiring companies. I have a company now that is completely unrelated to anything else I've done before. But it was really kind of like a spur of the moment idea. So like I have a friend of mine, he was on The Voice a couple of years ago.
Yes.
Yeah. And so he sings for a lot of presidents around the world, but he was singing for Trump and we were at Mar-a-Lago and he had Trump laughing for like 30 minutes after he sang for him. And I was like, dude, that's your gift. It's like, you can sing,
you can connect with
10
people.
out of 10 and then you're funny as hell. So we're doing a 90-minute stand-up comedy musical.
Oh yeah.
So it's like a combination between really big musical pieces and then stand-up comedy.
Oh yeah.
And it's Dave Chappelle and John Mayer doing it, but Dave Chappelle can't sing and John Mayer isn't funny. So
you've got both aspects.
So I have one guy who looks like Matt Rife, who's like, can do all three. And I'm like, well, I mean, this is like super marketable. So I was like, hey, I've never done anything like this before.
Let's give it a go.
But let's give it a go. Right. And like, let's get some great people in and like, we'll figure it out as we go. I'm actually have meetings on that Monday, Tuesday. And then we're doing a show in August and we have a bunch of people from Netflix and Hulu coming.
Oh yeah.
So, it's like going into things that I had no idea how to do any of this stuff, but I just saw a guy who I thought is a good friend of mine who's super talented. And I was like, hey,
I see the potential for this thing.
Yeah. I was like, hey, this has never been done before. Like, can we pull it off? And, then you're like, okay, well, how do we do it? And then how do I minimize my downside? Right. So how do we be cost conscious and how do we do this? Like where we can do where we can do like a little bit of a test run where, we're not pouring millions of dollars into something and then it fails. Like, it's like, hey, can we do a quick small test, an iterative test and see if we can get some traction. And then if we can get some traction, then you can put the cash into it and like really double down and like
scale it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's doing these small tests to try to understand like, hey, is this a viable project or not? Yeah. I think if people looked at that and said, just, hey, if I can do some small test, if I have this idea, people I think get overwhelmed by, oh, I don't have the cash, or it's like, oh my gosh, it's going to cost me all this. They don't see the vision of how to do it. It's like, well, just take it down into a smaller thing. How do I do a very, very small test to see, is this thing that I'm thinking of, like, is this a marketable thing? Do people like it? I've heard of a bunch of different ideas. I'm like, hey, you could probably do a test on that for like 30 grand. They're like, 30 grand. They're like, oh, I'll do that tomorrow. They're like, I thought it was going to cost me like $400,000 and all this. I'm like, no. If you can do it like this way. And if you can cut those costs down, then you can take a lot of shots and try a lot of experiments. And one of my friends who, she just became the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world, actually younger than Taylor Swift. And I've known this girl for 6-7 years. I hosted her birthday party a couple of years ago. Like John Summit and Zed played in the front room. Like, it was super cool. But like, I was asking her, like, how'd you come up with the idea for your company? Her company is Scale AI. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yes.
Yeah. And she was like, honestly, we got into Y Combinator. We didn't know what we were going to create. So we just created like 6 test landing pages. And that was the one that hit. And now they're just raising money at 25 billion valuation. So again, small test, cheap test. How do I come up with something that might have some traction? Right. Okay, cool. Let's build that out. And then you get some user traction and then build it. I have 2 other friends that have companies that have done something similar and, multi-billion-dollar companies now. And they started off with really small tests. They're just like, hey, how do we do these small little iterations? And then we can build on it. So
yeah. And it's funny, the correlation there too, in data structure, that's the same thing we do. It's like, if you have a data set that's 1 billion or trillion lines or, a large data sample, like, well, you're going to test it with like 1,000. You're not going to like open it to production at 1 trillion, things, because it's going to take too long for you to get a result.
100%.
But then if it's wrong, like, well, you just waited all that time for the result. Because if you sample sized it with smaller segment, you would know, okay, this works or it doesn't.
Right.
And the other correlation there with entrepreneurship too. Yeah. It's like, if you take 10 shots on goal with a $30,000, $40,000 idea, well, you still did $400,000, $400,000 worth of work. But now you've got 10 repetitions of this thing to know, okay, these things didn't work last time. So I can, and
usually if you try 3 or 4 things,
you'll find something.
Like, that's the thing, is it's kind of, you're kind of trying to plug away and figure out like which avenue is going to go down the right lane. But, it's just about little process of experimentation and then tweaking it. And honestly, using the scientific method to really come up with ways that you can get it done. But if you try 3 or 4 things, usually you'll find a solution.
Yeah. And because essentially with like anything, how we're going to learn anything is by doing it. Right? Like, what's the scope to do this? Well, like, even if you do all the research and all the diligence and all the prep you can, when you get into it and you actually start doing it, there's going to be shit you would have not known 100%. Or theorized or planned for. So there's no amount of, I have enough data, research, market intelligence. Like, there's going to be things that come up.
And honestly, most of the time you're wrong. Like, when you have this idea of like what you think a product's going to be, and then you start doing it, and
it evolves.
Yeah. There's all this technical debt, right? Because you're building all these features that you think people want. And then you push
no like
customer feedback, right? So then you push it out to the customer.
And they're like, we hate this. This sucks.
Or the customer doesn't use any of the stuff that you thought they were going to use, and they use this thing over here
that you've put no time and effort into. And they're like, hey, this would be great if this worked. And you're like, yeah, but what about all these things? It's like, but what are they telling you they want?
Yeah. So the guy whose family that I met when I first went out to LA, his dad founded Intuit.
Okay.
And so, large company.
Yeah, huge.
and so I talked to Scott one day and I was like, hey, what, like, is the product that you created, is that, what he's like, no, actually we created this like Quicken product. Right. And then we found out people were using it like on a business scale, that they were using it for their personal finances.
Mhm.
So they started creating like, TurboTax, and they started creating all these products, but he's like, it was a surprise. Like we didn't expect that to happen.
Yeah. We built this thing, and then we thought, hey, this is the vision. We said it was going to be for this, but then the product rolled out, and then the use case became this thing. And so, yeah, when you have that feedback, it's like you either adapt to it and capitalize on it, or you don't, or like try to force users into your thing. And it's like, well, you're never like, the customer will tell you what it wants.
Yeah.
Or just even watching how they use the thing will tell you how they see the value in it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to ask people what they want because
most people don't know.
You have to innovate for people. Like, if Henry Ford always said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Exactly. No, 100%.
Yeah. You have to, but I think you have to savor the surprises, and you have to be open and being flexible. Right. But,
adaptive more than anything.
Yeah.
Because like you said there, to the scientific method idea, the way learning simply is just error correction. It's like you take 3, 4, 5 shots and like all you're doing is correcting the errors of, hey, these things didn't work and those things did. Okay. So then just don't do the things that didn't work, and just if I simply just do less of the things that don't work, I get better. It doesn't mean I didn't really get any smarter or any more concise. I just stopped doing shit that didn't work.
Yeah.
And that's a component of error correction learning that I think goes undermined and you can apply that. I've called them fundamental truths, and we can see them as far back as 1700s, even as far back as it's my main enjoyment, I think, for reading, is that even as far back as people could have wrote something down, like we can find truth in it today. The idea of, like we mentioned, those famous people earlier, Gandhi, Jesus, like it's always because we've always found, people have been saying for as long as we've been around and been able to write, that it means more to do something for someone else than yourself. And that's standard truth through no matter what kind of civilization was present and what was available. Like today I can say I feel more happy, fulfilled, excited, overjoyed to be able to do something for someone else than I do for myself. It's like, and wow, people have wrote about that forever. Okay, so that is true. Like that is something I know to be the truth of reality.
Yeah, I mean, we're hardwired that way too, right? Because when you have kids, that's what you spend the rest of your life doing stuff for them.
Someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, we're programmed that way. That's who we are as people.
Yeah.
Just to go back to the entrepreneurship thing. So, talking about Scott, for example, right? When he started into it, I think it was like 84, 88, something like that. So late 80s. So he cleared out his parents' retirement accounts, right? He cleared out his whole savings. And the only reason Intuit almost failed, the only reason they made it is because his wife was a VP at a company and they were using all of the disposable income put into the company. But he's like, I was literally, the only reason I kept going is because I didn't know how to pay my parents back. Because I would have bankrupted. Like I took everything from them. Now, you talk about how it's gotten easier. Now you can do something, small test, right? Get some traction. And then you can go to some of your friends and say, hey, I have this idea. Like, do you want to put in $15,000, $20,000, $30,000? And you can go to 10 friends and you can raise the money and you can give up a little bit of equity. And we talk about, like there's a thing called secondaries now where you can actually build a startup. And let's say the valuation keeps growing. You don't have to wait for an exit or IPO. Now you can actually sell your stock to people who will buy your stock, and then you can have a liquidity event.
Yes.
And so it's so much easier now. And it's now particularly with AI, there's never been an easier time to build stuff. And the capital markets are, I know if you're not in this world, it seems daunting, but just think about just a few small friends that you have that might have 20, 30 grand. They're like, yeah, this sounds like a really cool idea. Okay, cool. Like you want to invest in it, you give a little equity and you can actually go and build something. Whereas before there wasn't any of this structure there.
It was always all gate kept and purposely made even harder to get into to mitigate the people from trying.
Private equity wasn't really a thing. Venture capital was not really a thing.
Yeah.
A lot of these things didn't really exist, or they were very nascent industries. And so now there's just so many more opportunities and so many more ways to do it. But look, at the end of the day, you got to have no balls, no babies, right? You got to have courage to go out and do it. And so you got to be able to go out and take the shot. But again, that's why I say minimize the downside risk and take small shots. Don't just, okay, cool, I have this idea. Let me put my whole life savings and put it into it. And if it fails, you're going to Vegas and putting it on black, right? Let's see how we can break it down, smaller idea. Let me take a little bit of a shot. Let me see if it works. Okay, what did I learn from this? And if you do that, it becomes much more manageable. Yeah. But I would recommend just starting with one thing, doing 4 things at one time. I've started my first company when I was 26. I've been doing this for a long time. I've invested in a lot of businesses. I've built stuff. So I kind of have a degree of confidence. I have a network now where if I want to do certain things, I'm able to do it. But everyone should just start off with one thing and just try to learn from.
Yeah, jam as much as you can into that. And then, sure, spread it out.
Yeah. And then once that's what Google, that's what all these companies do, right? They start one thing, they build it up. It's like what I call it. It's called the beachhead. So like you come in, you establish the beachhead, you win the market share, and then you take the profits and then you start investing in other things. And so that's what I've largely done. That's how I got into some of these other hobbies that I've done as well. That are extraordinarily expensive. And so
I guess for maybe anyone who's kicked back to you on that would be, it's really easy to sit there and say like, you've made a decent large sum of money and been rather successful. Like, it's easy to sit in that perspective and say like, it's great now.
Yeah, I started with zero.
Yeah, exactly. So like,
I mean, most people, they start with
zero. Yeah.
I mean, technically everyone starts with zero, right? Because you're born, everyone does the same process, right? So it's,
what would be some advice you could give or a perspective you could offer to someone who's really like caught up in self-doubt or like an imposter syndrome idea?
Yeah. I think Hormozi has that saying where it's like, you don't build confidence from like screaming affirmations. Like it's like doing things and like proving to yourself that you're capable of doing things. So I think it's always just like you said, start small, getting some quick wins. I think is super important. Like, if you're not feeling super great about how you look, like you're not in shape, like, okay, just work out a couple days a week, and just kind of build upon that. Right. I think a lot of it is, again, the snowball, like
generating that momentum.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, there's been points in your life and in my life too, where, we felt like, man, we're lost, don't know where to go. Not sure like what the direction is. So I definitely think like just like making small wins helps a lot. And then in my personal opinion, a lot of the stuff that I've done, whether it's flying or all this other stuff that I like hobbies that I've done in my life, I think it's like having someone who has either done it or like a great mentor. I think that really helps you kind of progress faster, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that I see a big market opportunity is a lot of the people I've dated and a lot of girls I know are very successful women, but they can't find a mentor because there's obvious reasons. They try to find a guy mentor. It's challenging.
Yeah. For obvious reasons.
Yeah, for obvious reasons. And then with women, once women have kids, it's much harder. They don't just have a lot of like excess time to be giving someone like a couple hours a week just to like sit down and talk to them. But and I don't even say like mentorship. I think it's more just like develop good friendships, people that really inspire you, and just I just try to learn. But those people help guide you in ways and like introduce you to people and like and that really helps you, I think, accelerate a lot faster.
And you can like in real time like bounce things off of them. Like, hey, I had this, and they're like, yeah. But like, and then if they really are a good mentor, I've had a few as well. We kind of like. It's kind of like, to me, it is like being a parent. Like there's times where you're like, even when I mentor like undergrad students at the university I went to, and at times I'm like, yeah. And I just kind of let it play out for them because I know they need to experience like the failure or like, I can tell them, hey, don't do that. But I know that they won't understand the why. So like they need to go and make the mistake. Unless it's like really, really detrimental. I'll be like, okay, actually you don't want to do that. And I'll tell you why, like, you don't want to like tell your professor to go fuck off in the middle of class. Like, here's why, okay. But like, okay, hey, like you think you have an idea? Like, we'll try it. Like, even though I can see that maybe like I can see very obvious holes. And so I maybe like ask you some questions to like generate your thinking because I know that as much as I maybe want to like help you and like protect you, I know that like you still need to understand it yourself and like learn from it. So it's like, I think that's the hardest part.
But also like no person understands all different industry segments, businesses, right? So I think it's also gonna be dangerous if a mentor is telling, like, you're like, hey, I have an idea. And they're like, no, that's not gonna work. It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, it's not like you bat 1,000,
like, exactly. Yeah.
Like if everything you did worked out, then everybody would be coming to you to try to figure out the world's problems. But
100%.
Yeah, it's I think more so is just kind of finding someone who believes in you. I think that's the biggest thing is someone who like really loves you and believes in you and that you feel like, hey, I can go out and fail and they're going to dust me off and like get me back up and like I'll go out there again, right?
And me again, yeah.
Yeah, so just having someone that you look up to and you're inspired by, I think is really important. And when I was in my mid-20s, I was hanging out with a lot of great people, but I met a guy who, big movie producer in Hollywood, and he had like an old World War II plane. And so we started flying when I was like 25. And then he got into defense contracting, he got these military jets. We started doing like JTAC combat training, like pulling like 7Gs.
I saw your videos like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we started doing like crazy stuff. And then, I had some friends of mine who were like flying Gulfstreams and they were like, hey, it'd be awesome if you came on the trip. So I was like, I don't even know how to do that. And like, so then they got me into that. And, I'm a G650 pilot. I got my G7 type rating last year. So it's like just having people, and I was always, when I was like flying these like World War II planes, at the very beginning when I was 25, I didn't have a pilot's license. I was just sitting in the back, right? I was sitting in the back, like hanging out, going with them. I was like this big movie producer, made Iron Man 3, made a bunch of big movies, and like, just really inspiring guy. And I was like, man, he's like doing it right. He's building a great company. He's got cool hobbies. He's a good guy.
He lives the life he wants to live.
Yeah. And so having someone like that to like look up to was really inspiring for me. And also like just change the way that you look at things and like what is possible. I remember I was on his plane one time. He has like a Global Express, a big plane. And we were sitting down one day about to go to New York. He's like, Patrick, look, don't just be another billionaire with a jet. Right. And I was just like, what? I was like, I was a billionaire. I mean, but he's like, that's not good enough. I was just like, okay. I mean, that just radically shifted the way I thought. I was like, oh, well, I need to be good at like all these things. And if this person believes that I could do it, then I should believe I could do it. Right. And so I think it's like sometimes like a friend of mine, she was buying the speechwriter. And she worked for multiple presidents. And so I actually took Peyton on a Gulfstream out to DC a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and we went to the White House. And I was at our Basel in Miami, and I was hanging out with this girl, and she just kept telling me, she's like, hey, look, like I really think you should make a run. And I had never thought about politics or a political career or anything like that. But this girl who had worked with multiple presidents was telling me like, hey, I think this is like what you're probably meant to do.
You kind of
I was like, well, you're literally working with the president right now.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of changed my whole perspective. So I think I'm already starting to look into that and potentially go down that lane. Not now, but in the next couple of decades, I'll start trying to make a run maybe for Senate and then go and try to do the presidency. But again, I would have never thought that was possible unless somebody kind of had the
perspective because
they're actually doing it.
Hey, you'd be a good thing
right.
like,
so sometimes it's like people seeing something in you that you don't see in yourself.
Yeah,
100%. And a lot of times it's really that, just hanging out with people who, again, that you look up to, that you really respect their opinion, and they're sitting here telling you things, and you're just like, oh wow, okay, that sounds like a great idea. Like kind of like when you're talking about the podcasting thing. Like you're like, hey, I listened to my voice, and I was like, hey, I actually don't sound that bad. Yeah. It actually sounds pretty good. And so you're like, hey, why don't we give this a shot? And so again, you got some equipment, you started the process, and it's just like those small little steps, And if you look at like Joe Rogan didn't make any money from his podcast the first 5-6 years.
Yeah.
He was literally just doing it because he wanted to talk to people. So
same.
It's literally just taking small shots and progressing and building upon it. But I think it does it at the very beginning. It seems so daunting. Like if someone, there's so much. It's like, especially an entrepreneur, you're like, oh, I have to learn finance. I have to learn sales. I have to learn this. I have to learn product innovation, like all this stuff. It can be very overwhelming. I think it's just like, just do one thing at a time and say, okay, well, if I look at what I'm trying to do, is there somebody who's like in that space or sector that's like, has done it before that maybe I can talk to?
Has done it well, yeah.
Yeah, I can just sit down and talk to, like try to understand. And, the cool thing about the entrepreneurship community, particularly in the United States, is that it's so mentoring and nurturing. Like there are so many people out there who want to help the next generation, who it's like almost like it's just ingrained in our culture, right? And there really are a lot of people out there who really do want to sit down and talk to you. So I think it's just having a little bit of courage to reach out to those people. And now, again, easier than ever, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many different ways to contact people. Yeah. And like I've known friends who've got meetings with people I was like stunned that they got a meeting with just because they were on Twitter, and they just sent them a message, or maybe it was LinkedIn. I can't remember which one it was, but they literally just sent them a message. The guy replied to, yeah, I'll meet up with you. It's like some guy was like one of the head of finance at like JP Morgan or something. And I was just like, how did you get a meeting with that guy? He's like, oh, I just literally just messaged him and he just responded. It's like seems so simple.
Yeah. I mean, I've done that with something I'm continually doing with the podcast is like, I find people I want to talk to, and I'm like, fuck, I'll just DM them. Sure. Just like, like just take the shot. Like, cause worst case, like, there isn't even like a risk aversion technique. Like if they don't respond, like, well, you're no worse. Mm-hmm. As long as you don't say some like foul shit to them, if you just, hey, I'm XYZ and I'd like to maybe sit down and have you on my show and talk about XYZ things. And, hey, just let me know if you'd be interested and love to connect on that. Like that message costs you nothing.
And people appreciate it too. Cause they're like, oh, this person hustles.
Yeah.
They want it. Mm-hmm. Right. Like that's, I have a lot of friends who are just starting companies, and they're hanging out with really successful people who have already built these huge companies. And it's an interesting thought experiment because they're like, before I was working at a company, I would try to talk to these people, no response. Now that I'm a founder, they'll talk to me. And I think it's because you go into, like, you're going into the ring when you're an entrepreneur, like you're willing to go in there and get beat up every day. Mm-hmm. And so you admire, like if you're a boxer, you admire people who are stepping in the ring. Yeah. And so as an entrepreneur, like, you know, if someone's stepping in the ring and willing to put themselves through all the adversity and the struggle and go through the sacrifice in order to create the dream, it doesn't matter how big or small or whatever, because they appreciate that you're doing it. And so it opens up all risk. Yeah. It opens up all these doors by just putting yourself in that position and putting yourself out there like that.
Yeah,
so.
no, 100%. I love that, man. Yeah, I think, that's so true. I because there's this semblance of like respect from the side of, that was me once. I once was the person who had, like, I was foolish and naive and taking a shot that probably wasn't going to hit. And I was reaching to people who had no reason to respond to me, but like, that was them once upon a time too.
Well, and then also too, you remember all the no's that you got, all the setbacks, and then all of a sudden there was one person that said yes. Yeah. One person that changed like the whole course of your life, your business, you know, your family's life, you know, everything, right? And so you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll be that person for this person. And like this other person was that person for me. And so it's like a pay it forward thing.
Yeah.
And
different points in the cycle. And it's pretty fulfilling. I think, and so far that's why I've chosen to mentor now, like post being at the university, is like, I want to be able to, you know, because people inspired me, and I'm like, well, I want to try and like give that back to someone. Yeah, because like you said, I think of those people who did that for me, and I'm like, maybe I could be that for someone. I had my first real dose of it a few months ago, and I don't think I've ever felt something so, like, even as a father, like that. It was just a different type of, you know, like emotional reward that, like, you know, with your children, you kind of have this, like, if you're not a psychopath, at least, like, internal obligation, you know, like, that's my child, I should, you know. But with these people, it's like, I don't have to do this. Like, it's an active choice for me to go to this place. It's probably usually inconvenient to me. You know, like, I have other things I could do. And this guy that, you know, he was like 19, and he was just a little, like, he just lacked some certainty. And I said, like, you already have what you need. You already have everything you need right now. Like, you're the only thing that's mitigating you from getting where you want to go. I said, maybe people don't want to tell you that because maybe that sounds a little mean, but like, you have the skills. Like, you're smart enough. You already have, like, there's nothing stopping you minus your willingness. So if you can just generate some of that, you can have it. And then it's like 6 months went by. Like, no, I talked to this kid for like 6 minutes, you know, and he was like, paragraph message, like 6 months later, of how he, like, just, you know, I said, like, I've pulled that Alex Hormozi line, like, just do the reps. Like, I told him, I said, if you're willing to do the reps, like, you'll find success. He's like, I'm just struggling to get a job. I'm struggling to do this. I'm like, well, how many actual reps are you doing? Not how long, because I can easily make it sound great. Oh, I've been doing this for 6 months. How many applications have you done? Like, let's get to the lowest common denominator. If you tell me you've done 3 applications in 6 months, like, I don't give a shit what you have to say. Like, I did 100 applications this week. Okay. Now I know you're actually, like you said, hustling. I know you're putting in the work. You're
and bad stuff happens to people all the time.
No, 100%.
I mean, I've had bad stuff happen to me that was out of my control, and it sucks.
It's the only part of success I find completely paradoxical, because more success doesn't mitigate bad things from you.
No, for sure. Yeah. And stuff happens all the time. So when I see, sometimes when you see people struggling, you're like, well, they're giving everything they had. It's just literally some stuff's out of their control. Exactly. Right. And sometimes people just get unlucky. And then other times you get extremely lucky. And it's just, you just got to keep going. So that way, you know, luck eventually finds you. I think people, look, there's a lot that you can do to improve the way that you run a company, do things, but also I do think there's a large factor of luck. Like, you have to just keep going. And like, it's hard too, because when you're getting the crap kicked out of you and you're like, man, I just want to give up. You just have to keep going, because like, luck will eventually find you. And it's amazing how quickly it can turn around. Like, you can be miserable in this like low place and, oh my God, I killed myself for 6 months, no progress. And boom, all of a sudden it's just like to the moon.
Yeah. Now it's everything you wanted.
Oh yeah. It's crazy. And it's literally just, even when you don't feel like it, you just have to keep going. It's like in life, I always thought that it's so interesting. Like, all the things worth having are always hard. Like, being in shape is hard. Like, being
successful is hard.
Being successful is hard. Like, everything is like hard.
A good relationship. Like,
yeah,
it takes work, and more work than you feel is like reasonable for the thing.
Yeah. Relationships are hard. Like, everything is hard. And so it's almost like a test in life, is like, how, you know, yeah. I mean, it is quite interesting, but, and
I think
finding motivation is tough too. You know, it's particularly when things are not going well. It's like, well, things are going well now. I think, you know, it's hard to see how things are going to get better. And so that's hard. That's the hard part, is when you're just you're down and you're out and you're like, man, I've been like, it's never going to get better. You know, it's,
everything's temporary.
yeah, but that's the hard part, right? I think
I get it. I mean,
I see why a lot of people give up. It's sad because I think a lot of people are like so close to having the thing that they want.
Yeah. And they quit right before it.
They quit like right before. Like if they just would have gone a little bit longer, I think there's a chance they could have done it. And so
I have my take on
them.
I have my take on the inversion theory that I want to throw at you because it's something I've found that I'm willing to borderline call it a fundamental truth of life. I think that if anything in life, I can litmus test it in my own life holistically, and it's proven true over and over again. And then I spoke with other people and I find it to be true with them as well. Things get hardest when you're the closest. Like it's easy to play baseball when it's T-ball, right? But the dropout rate like gets higher the higher you go, right? So, then travel ball, then college, then pro, like the dropout rate continues because you're closer and closer to making it. How many people will drop out of med school in 8th grade? Well, like they can't theoretically, but like they'll want to be a doctor's great. But how many people will be almost done with med school and be like, fuck this, I don't want it.
Yeah. Same thing in the piloting world. Same thing, martial arts. You see, you get closer towards the black belt, like, but people drop out.
So I think like that, to use that as an indicator that you're all like, if that perspective altering is, if it's super hard, that's life's way of going, you said this is the thing you wanted. Are you willing to endure it right now? Because if you do, and you make it, you stick it out on the other side, usually you get what you wanted.
Yeah. And there's been a lot of times that I've wanted to quit. Yeah. Like, I mean, man, so many times, and it's just like, okay, well, and then I just think about, well, what would I do if I quit? And then I just like, that doesn't sound great. So, I mean, it sounds worse than if I just keep going.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's tough to like pull it through for sure. But I think that's why, again, what we talked about earlier, having that societal value, having friends around you, family, people that care about you, where it's not just all about this one thing. If you feel like an abundance in like other areas of your life, then when things are going really bad in one area, you can find a way to push through, but you need people around you to help you do that. I think we're all, no matter how much ambition or motivation, all that, how mental fortitude you have, you need people around you to kind of be supportive. And
I agree.
And also to give you that meaning. Otherwise, like, why are you pushing so hard? Like if you don't have anything to push hard for.
What's it for? No, I think that's something I've probably in the last 2 years really gotten very focused on, is there's no like tangibility to good relationships per se. Like there's no like, oh, that made my net worth go up, or it made me, but there is an invaluability to good community, good connections, people who you love and care, who care about you, right? And it's really good, especially I think for young men who really get bullish on the like, I don't need anyone, I can be successful, I'm just going to put my head down and work. And it's like, yeah, but like we said earlier, like the cost of that is everything else. If you say I want to be the richest person in the world, it's like, I really don't think you want that. Like I promise you probably don't want that. You want to beat whatever financial hardship you have now, but the bar to do that is so much infinitely lower than you'd imagine, right? Like the structure to make $1 million a year is, as we've alluded to it like consistently, is it's never been easier than right now, and that puts you in such a perspective that like I think for me too is the irony of
I'm not saying it's I don't want anyone to, it's not easy, but it was harder before than it is like. Now there's so many different ways to do it. There's so much access to people that you didn't have access to before. Now we're all connected, digitally. And you're like what is it? Like a degree or two separation from anybody pretty much at this point. And so it just, it's easier than it was. Even it's 30, 40, 50 years ago, it's so much easier now.
It's still work, but I'm saying that
it's always going to be work.
But. Yeah. And I've, as I told you, I think the problem still holistically for people in today's age is knowing what they want, because I've really sat with my therapist and gone, okay, like why do I find this, like as I've solved my money problems, right? I'm in a spot where like I'm not worried about paying my rent, or like I have a second car, and like I'm not struggling to pay my, like there's nothing immediately that I can't afford to do. Right? There's always things I want. Like, oh, I'd like a nicer car, or to be able to be on a private plane, or to be, like, okay, cool, great, but like there's nothing that in my immediate like care for me or my son or anything that's like out, like that's not there, and I'm able to help people I care about already. And so it's like, okay, then so what is the right amount of money? Like at what point of money would I be like, no, I'm content with this? And I think enough people are like, maybe you don't have a holistic number. Like,
I think it all depends on what you're trying to do too. Like, I mean, the planes that I fly are $80 million and they're cost about $6 million a year to operate. Right. So there's a 10% rule in planes and boats that you're not supposed to spend 10% more than 10% of your net worth on a plane or a boat, right? Yeah. So you need $800 million to buy one of these planes. So there's probably about 3,000 people in the world that can afford these planes.
Yeah.
So if you want to own one of these planes, that's a barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
Now you could buy one that's like very used for like 40, 50 million bucks. But again, 400, 500, I mean, there's not that many. It's extremely expensive.
Yep.
So if you want to do that, which, most people like, they're like, hey, I'm okay with not doing that. Right. I always tell people all the time, like, you don't need to fly private. I mean, honestly, flying business class across the pond, like, to Europe or to Asia.
That's nice.
Like, that's all you need to do. The bar is like way lower. Right. But if you want to do that, then you need an insane amount of cash. Right. If you're like, hey, I want 2 kids. I want my kids to be able to go to whatever school they want to go to. I want to be able to vacation. Like, well, it's not like an unattainable thing. Yeah. But I think it all depends on what you want when it comes to a financial perspective.
No, 100%. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is most people don't know what they want. And then they don't ever sit down and ask themselves like, what do I want?
Yeah. Right? Well, again, it's hard to know what you don't want. Yeah. What you don't know. Right. Yeah. So it's like, people might love flying and they might be like, oh, this is cool, super cool. But I didn't even know this was even possible, And
and we as people, like I said, we're geared psychologically and as human beings to have more of a negativity bias. So it's like, if you could find out the inversion theory there, right, is start with what you don't want. What do you not want? Do you want to be broke? No. Okay. Well, then how much work do you want to do? Mm-hmm. Right. Like, just start by eliminating things you don't want. Like, well, people say, well, what's the ideal work environment? Well, do you want somebody who's going to micromanage you? Well, no. Okay. Well, so then that's off the table. And again, not so much as necessarily because we as people aren't good. Like, we are actually horrible at knowing what we want, but we're really good at knowing what we don't want. Because we have a bias to negativity. So we can tell you, hey, I don't want 1, 2, 3.
I mean, like, and that changes all the time. What you want now might not be what you want 10 years from now.
100%.
And I noticed myself too, when I was in my 20s, I got my first Gulfstream rating when I was like 28, 29. Okay. I was like, man, I just want to fly all the time. I was just going around the world, these planes. I mean, unbelievable experiences. I mean, you're flying at like 51,000 feet in the planes, and like you're going over the northern, you see like the northern lights. It looks like you're flying like into them. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable experiences. But I was like, man, this is all I want to do. And then you hit 32, 33, and I was like, oh, well, now I'm like, I want to start moving towards a family. Then I stopped caring as much about flying. So all this stuff is transitory as well. So it's I think,
because as you get older, like, again, like, we see it holistically. We make a joke at my mom, like, you're so nice now. Like, God, when I was when I was a kid, you were mean. You were so like, because like what was important to her at 32 versus now 53, like, is holistically
so much different. Yeah.
And it's like, again, like you said there, even to 10 years ago, like, I look at, okay, well, what did I think was important at 20? It's like, now
drinking beer, 30. Going out, having fun.
Exactly. Versus now I'm like, oh my God.
No, you want to weightlift and you want to work hard and you want to do cool stuff, right? I mean, life is constantly evolving and changing. And so I think it's just, the cool thing about being like generating some financial success is that you get to choose what you want to do. And then if you decide you don't want to do that anymore, then you can pivot into something else, and you can, like, it's just giving you the freedom and flexibility. I think at the end of the day,
money is only, to me, I always use money as options. More money you have equals more options. You make more money, you have more option to buy a different car, a different home. Like, there's more options available to you if you have more financial resources. That's it.
Yeah. And for sure.
If you like lowest common denominator, like, more financial resources does equal more options. And so how many options do you want?
Yeah. I mean, I always say that poverty is the absence of choice.
True. Yeah. It was still alluding there to, it's like, I have more choices. I have more things I could choose. Yeah.
Just freedom, flexibility. Yeah. You're like, hey, I really want to go to Spain. Like, you can go to Spain, like you can do what you want to do. But, so I mean, again, everyone should, I think we all want to work hard to a certain point to where we can kind of do the things that we want to do. But if you isolate strictly on that one thing, then you neglect the other things. Then you might get to where you want to go, but then you're going to regret the journey for sure.
Yeah.
That's the thing you got to be careful of.
Easy to find regret at the top of the mountain when that's all you have at the top of the mountain is yourself.
Yeah. Like, one thing that, sure, all the companies are great and all this stuff's cool, but one thing I'm really proud of is that I've really built out my life in a lot of different areas, and I have a lot of great hobbies, and I have a lot of friends, and get to do a lot of really cool stuff with big groups of people. Like, I did the 4-day trek to Machu Picchu with 38 friends.
That's awesome.
I do a lot of like really cool stuff with like big groups of friends, and get to really do really amazing experiences. I've been to 92 countries or something in the last like 12 years with about 1,500 people.
Awesome.
And I think about that more than I do
how much money you've made.
Yeah. Like, I mean, like, sure. Like I needed that in order to do all this stuff, but those are really like the experiences and stuff were great. So yeah, I mean, it's just, you want to, and also I could have made more money if I didn't do all this other stuff. Like if
you solely focused on how can I make the business better?
Like I'm probably one of 15 people in the whole world who has a G650 type rating, who doesn't do it professionally. There's probably only about 800 to 1,000 of these pilots in the world, but to do it as a hobby, it's like Eric Schmidt, who's the CEO of Google, Dan Freakin, who lives in Houston. And like I'm one of the 15. Like it's just, there's not many people in the world that have done this. Right. Cause it's so much time. And it's the time investment is ridiculous, right? It's so much time.
The time investment is the discriminator for a lot of these things.
And it's super expensive, right? Just the license is the license is $170,000, right?
And
then I mean, just to get the license, and then every 6 months you have to go pay $80,000 to go to school for 5 days to do recurrent training. It's extremely expensive, right? But the time it takes to like get all this stuff is insane. And so, yes, I could have not done that. I could have not traveled tonight. I could have gone to 30 countries and I gone to 90 countries. I could have done like, I've read probably 400 to 500 books the last 10 years, right? Like physical books.
Yeah.
I could have read 200 and like, I could have done all that and probably spent 20 to 30 hours more a week working. And I could have ramped up the net worth but I wouldn't have all those experiences. And, sometimes I think about, maybe I went too extreme. I have a personality. Me and you are pretty similar in the sense of like, we go like heavy into stuff, right? So we're like,
it's like all in.
Yeah. If we're going to a race, we're doing a marathon, or we're doing a triathlon, or we're going to run 100 miles, It's
like, I'm not like all 5Ks good enough.
Yeah. We kind of have that personality. So, I'm like you. I'm like, I go heavy into stuff. And then you look back, you're like, well,
maybe I didn't go that hard.
Maybe I didn't. Maybe I pushed it too hard. But I could have just isolated on one area, but then you wouldn't have the richness, right? The life is about like having richness in a lot of areas and a lot of experiences. And you can always go back and you can build more companies, you can do more stuff, but like,
hindsight's always beautiful. It's always 2020, right?
Yeah.
Like everything past tense looks really great.
Everyone's always, you always read these articles like, oh, what do you regret when you get older? I'm like, I think you're always going to have regrets. It doesn't matter. Like I've done some hospice volunteering. I'm really philanthropic, right? So I've given a lot of cash. I get blood every 112 days. Like I try to help as many people as I can because I look at my life and like a lot of, to be honest, everyone thinks like, oh my God, you're such a genius and all this stuff. Really, it's because a lot of people like believed in me.
Yeah, people helped you out.
Yeah, people helped me out, right? Mm-hmm. So I try to pay it forward and do all the things that we're talking about. And I've done hospice volunteering, and like I've never met someone on their deathbed who
I have no regrets.
Like I've never heard that at all. Because you always look back, you're like, okay, well, if I would have done this a little bit differently, this might have happened, because you never know the counterfactual. Yep. And so you're never like, okay, well, if I would have done this, this would happen. So you're always
you can't like litmus test with two realities at once.
Yeah. So
you only know what you did.
Exactly. So I'm like, okay. And I talk to my girlfriend about this all the time. I'm like, well, maybe if I didn't go like so heavy into like these areas. I used to host a lot of parties, like Lucy's party. I mean, I probably hosted, I would say 30 to 40, 300 plus person parties over the last 10 years. I've done another probably 20 to 30 dinner parties of about 100 people. And I've done maybe 50 parties or probably 40 boat days. And so each of those times you're having to go to the grocery store and get food and like get alcohol. And, like it's a lot of work. And then after you got to clean up and all this stuff. And I look back on that. And I mean, look, I've had some amazing experience. I don't even drink, I don't drink or do drugs or anything. Yeah. And, but I look back on that. I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So, it's like, you're always going to have regrets, but
I think the argument should be that you should have regret. Like you should be proactive enough in your own life to take a risk and take shots and do things. But again, like you said, there's always the other side of the coin. Like what could it have been? Or if I did, again, like in hindsight, you can be like, well, if I didn't pour so much into the business, like I could have been a more present father or a better husband. It's like, but then the business wouldn't be the thing that it is now.
Yeah. And I think, the important thing I think is to start early on like pushing the boundary, because if you start early, if you have regrets, then you have time to correct. The problem is like if you, like the average age of a successful tech CEO is like 45 when they start the company, right? So then if you start late and then let's say it doesn't work out, well, then you don't have a lot of time to course correct, right? Now people are obviously working later and there's more time now than there has ever been, but it's just like starting early. And it's not like with a business or just, you can start anything early and, but pushing the boundary to where if you do have regrets that you can learn from it. Because now, like, I think I did very aggressively for like 13 years about all this stuff, right? Just insane pushing all this thing. And now I'm starting to like be a little bit more reflective because looks like I'm moving towards a family and like, building a life with someone. And now I'm like, okay, did I make the mistake? But now it's like, okay, well, I'm in my mid 30s. Like I have another 13 years, another 14 years, to like really do the next chapter. And so now I can kind of course correct and like fix the things that I regretted. But if I was 60 years old, then, you're like,
it's fuck.
Yeah, then you just, then you're like, damn, that's
the light that you don't want to see is near at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. No. And I think, again, I've said, and Arthur Brooks is big on this. I love his work. I'd recommend anyone to check it out. But he said, basically every 10 years you become a different person. Yeah. Like we've alluded to, like what from 20 to 30, what you care about is going to change holistically. And again, like, I mean, at least for me, 20s weren't super great. I'm nearing 30 now, and like I'm like, man, 30 is looking pretty cool. But then I've heard people say like the theory of like with age, like life gets better, partially because you do have more reps, more experiences, more perspective to it. So like again, and also, but simultaneously, what also is evolving is what you care about, what's important to you, right? And so it's like, yeah, when you're 20, like you're all high strung about everything, and it's like, you get to 30, and you're like, I never cared about all that stupid shit. And then again, like same thing by 40, you're like, fuck, why did I care about that?
Yeah, you just get smarter, and then you make less mistakes. And life gets more enjoyable when you make less mistakes.
100%, yeah. Just, even if you can't, like a track to get good at things, so many people are focused on, again, I alluded to this earlier, it's like, how can I really just start doing all the things right? And it's like, well, just really start doing less wrong. Like that's equivocally valuable and can push you in the direction you think you want to go in, just make less mistakes, get less wrong.
It's interesting, all the things that we're talking about, this stuff's been documented over long periods of time. I've been to Tony Robbins conferences, all this stuff.
I love his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so my friend's business partner was Tony, and I went to a Business Mastery, and I went backstage and I was hanging out with Tony, and I was talking to him, and I was like, Tony, the thing that I'm really seeing from this is that, you can talk about all like how you do accounting and finance. The biggest thing that I from this Business Mastery, and by the way, Business Mastery is like $15,000 to go. Yeah, it's a significant investment.
Yeah, and it's not cheap.
And so I'm like, hey, the thing that I'm really learning is you are literally just getting people to scream and shout all day like they're gladiators. And it's because everyone is like their own biggest enemy. And there's so much information out there. There's all these podcasts, all these things like people can listen to, but for some reason we still have these blocks. Like people, it's like hard to get over that barrier, right? I mean, again, it's like information with diet and exercise. Like there's a limited amount of, everybody knows what they need to do.
Yeah. And again, like you said, maybe not to the macronutrient level, but like you said, they know, well, if I drink more water and maybe went on a walk every couple days, like a couple days a week and stopped eating so much fucking fast food, like my health will be better. Exactly.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
And I talked to my brother, and I was, when he was losing all this weight, and I was like, well, there's not one diet that works. Otherwise someone would just do that diet. And he's like, no, you're wrong. He goes, calorie deficit. That works for everyone. He's like, if you don't eat, if you don't eat as many calories as you take in, or if you burn more calories than you take in, you will lose weight. And I was like, oh, well, you're right. Then if you talk about it like that, it's just simple, right?
Same
it's just
thing
like
with wealth. Like if you don't spend more money than you make, like you can be wealthy.
Yeah. Actually, if you look at the number one profession for like millionaires, like teachers, accountants, usually people, it's not these like super high income earning people. No. Actually in entrepreneurship, only about 25% of entrepreneurs make more money being an entrepreneur than they would actually working for a corporation.
Yes.
So again, that shows you that it's really not a financially driven decision. It's more of like, I want to do the things that I want to do, and I don't want someone to tell me what to do. And I'm willing to make less money,
sacrifices,
or whatever I need to do in order to do that, because that's how I want to live my life. And so, again, it's not all this, like, if it was just purely a money decision, I think people
there would be more entrepreneurs, even more than there currently are, if it was solely just money, money incentive based.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. No, it's, again, and then I'm a big fan of a person who like inspired me to do the show. His name's Chris Williams. He's got a podcast, Modern Wisdom. Yeah. And he
lives in Austin, right? He lives in Austin, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Great dude.
Yeah. Peter fan. T lives in Austin.
Yes. All these amazing. Austin's the hotbed, man. He says, the current generation is always trying to learn what the last generation was trying to teach us. So it's like our parents are like, hey, like don't spend your whole life working for someone you don't want to work for. Hey, money isn't everything. Hey, there's more to like social relationships and connections and these things outside of money matter more than the money. This isn't new. Like we said, like this isn't new ideas.
No, that's new. I mean, look, if you look at 2,000 years ago and the ancient Greeks, like Socrates and Plato and Aristotle.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at Marcus Aurelius and meditations, like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about it's been around for 2,500 years. Yeah. Now, what's interesting is that we lost those in the Dark Ages, and then we rediscover it, and that's how Europe really took off and invented the modern world. But it's those principles and ideas that were always around, and they've always been around. It's just really getting everyone to like believe in themselves and to go out there and do it. That's really just the hardest part. And look, I mean, me and you, I think, grew up in similar situations, and like, it's hard to like figure all this stuff out. But that's why I think it's like you got to take like small wins, take shots, and I mean, just know that that you're going to fail, and it's okay to fail.
Yeah, and like
people are so scared of failure. I even talk to friends who I know their company failed, and I'll be like, "Hey, man, I'm really sorry that." He's like, "Oh no, we're the business. Oh, it's just like they're so afraid.
They can't like own it and have that."
Yeah, I'm like, and you know what's so interesting is when you go into other communities, like the martial arts community, the piloting world. After you fly, you sit down, and your instructor tells you all the ways that you failed. And so you're sitting there, and
it's not about that you successfully didn't just like kill yourself and everyone else.
Yeah.
It's like, these are all things you didn't do right.
Yeah. I mean, they'll sit there and they'll tell you, hey, this was good. You did good here, but hey, look, you didn't do good here. Your altitude was a little off. Your power is off. You need to do this differently. You're constantly
getting like chastised about the things that aren't correct.
100%. Like when you went into the military, right? You're constantly getting feedback, like feedback. And so many people are scared of feedback. Yeah. And like they're scared of criticism. And again, if somebody's like actually genuinely cares about you and they want you to do well, they give you the feedback, well, then that's great.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's so many different things. Like we're all blind to so many different things because there's a limitation on like everything that you can interpret and see. And so having other people around you that care about you, that are helping you to uncover your blind spots, I think is super important. So yeah, I think it's a lot of people, I think, just don't believe that they can do it. And it's just getting people to believe in themselves and be okay with failure. And like, it's okay if you have a setback.
Failure is part of it. Like failure isn't a thing that says you can't do it. Failure is a sign that you're doing it right. Because if you can't just win, like the cost to win is like you have to lose.
Yeah. And there's so many, I mean, I can give you so many examples of people. There's a great thing of like Abraham Lincoln. It's just like, failed at this, failed at business, like lost this election, lost this, president of the United States, and then became one of the greatest people in history, right? So you can literally fail your whole life and then at the very end and still win.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's just trying. I mean, look, it sucks when you fail. It's heartbreaking.
It doesn't feel good.
It does not feel good.
But from it, you take the learnings and the lessons, and that's then what builds a better, then take the next thing on.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've had, sometimes you do some of these interviews and you just talk about all the things that go right. I mean, I'm pretty open about my failures too. Like I did a small back procedure one time, and the guy infected my back. And when I was with Peyton to the White House, I had a back infection. I could barely walk. I almost went paralyzed. And so that put me down for like 5 months. It was absolutely horrible. I had to get a line in my arm. That way I went to my heart. My mom had to inject me with
a PICC line?
Yeah, I had a PICC line. And I had to inject myself with antibiotics for 6 weeks. And I had it for 5 months, and they missed it on the MRI. And I went to go get stem cells in Colorado because I was desperate. I was like, holy shit, I literally think I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, you need to go to the hospital like right now. And I had it for 5 months. I almost went paralyzed.
What was the need for the procedure in the first place? Like what generated from your back?
Dude, it's just summiting mountains. Like flying the military jets. Like I ruptured a disc in my neck.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, fighter pilots, they have
too much force.
Yeah. Cause the helmet weighs 15 pounds. Your head weighs 8 pounds. So if you do 7 Gs, your head weighs like 160 pounds. And your cervical spine is not designed to take that kind of load. And then, like heavy weightlifting, summiting mountains, it's just like doing a very, very active lifestyle. And I went to the doctor in Colorado who's like, he like pioneered stem cells in the US. And I was like, hey, do I have some kind of genetic thing? Like, why do I get these herniations? And he's like, I'm looking at it. He's like, this is honestly just activity.
Load intensive.
Yeah. He's like, it's just activity. So yeah, that was horrible. My friend who taught me how to fly the military planes, he made Iron Man 3. Well, he bought this IP called Valiant and made a movie with Vin Diesel called Bloodshot. And so we did this movie premiere and helping him raise capital, and like all this stuff was going really great. And I had all these like huge families, like household names come into the premiere. COVID happened. 4 days later, the theater shut down.
Yeah.
I worked on that for 10 months, right?
Just for it to flop.
And then now getting money for film because they're like, oh, everyone's sitting at home watching movies. The theaters aren't doing as well. It's like, there's a lot of, I mean, like I've had some stuff that like really painful, that I've spent time on.
What do you think would be the like in your eyes, what do you think is the biggest failure you have thus far?
I would say I wouldn't point to any particular one thing because I haven't had I would say maybe lack of concentration. I think I've gone too spread out. I've gotten really good at a lot of things because I've focused on a lot of stuff, but I don't think I'm the best in the world at any one particular thing. And I think if I would have concentrated, I could have just done like one thing and maybe built like a very large company. Like I have 4 companies. I've self-financed almost all of them. One of them I actually had a dear friend of mine invest in. That's an oil and gas company that I own. And they're doing quite well. And I've built a great business portfolio and I'm doing a lot of cool stuff and it's great. No complaints.
Yeah.
But I haven't built a $25 billion company. Like if I would have focused, like I probably could have done something like that. So that's probably my biggest regret. It's weird because the diversification is great. It gives you like abundance in your life, but then concentration really is how you have the outsized returns. Cause it's really at the 90, like you said, the 90, 95th, 99 percentile that you get the extreme result. So I think in the next 12 to 13 years, I'm trying to consolidate some of this stuff down and not do as many different things and just try to focus on, like, honestly, I've done a lot of the grit work. So now it's just like, hey, I just want to concentrate on
just like dial it in.
Yeah. Like I've already done a lot of this stuff and you can't like, what I didn't realize too, when I have like my real estate license, my scuba dive license, I have my California boating license, I have all these licenses, right? And what I didn't realize is like the continuing education on this stuff is a lot. And like the real estate license, every 4 years, you have to do like more testing, piloting, more testing, boating license, not so much, but like, I'm a catamaran captain, I'm
so if I ever need any kind of vehicle operated, I can basically call you.
So I look at the world as like air, land, and sea, right? So in the air, I can go anywhere on the planet. I've traveled the whole world, 1,000 times over, like, flying jets. On land, you can do boating, cars, all that stuff. And then sea is like scuba and underwater stuff. So it's like, you just try to tackle all 3 of those, but
you seem to have done it.
Yeah, but it's incredibly tiring. Yeah. And like the continuing education. And the problem is like, okay, so I got I'm a catamaran captain, right? So I can rent a catamaran anywhere in the world and I can charter and I can take my friends around the Greek islands and all that stuff. It's all great. But I haven't sailed in like a year or 14 months because I got in a relationship and then I was doing this and I got my Gulfstream G7 type rating. And so then I was like, okay, well, I haven't sailed in forever. Do I feel comfortable? There's a difference between proficiency and being current. Like, do I feel comfortable taking my friends on like a trip? And it's like, not really, because I haven't sailed in like 14 months. Yeah. And so then you're like,
out of touch a little bit.
Yeah, really? No, not a little. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, I've never handled a boat like that. So but yeah, like how much of your daily tasks or work, I've learned this in data work, is like it's just off repetition. That you've learned by doing it. Because if you then put it down for a little bit, you're like, oh, like, even if it's just a matter of days, so you're like, why does this feel so taxing?
Or you look at like Gulfstreams, for example. Like I got my 700 type rating, or G7 type rating, I think in like August or September of last year. I think I flew like twice after that, but I haven't flown a jet in like 5 months. Do I feel comfortable going to a jet right now and just like transversing the world? Like, not really.
Not, yeah.
So the problem is like you can do all these like separate things, but then maintaining the proficiency to do them effectively and to do it right.
There's only so much you can do that well,
right? At these extreme levels, right? And so that's where I think I miscalculated a little bit, is that it's almost impossible to maintain all this stuff. And so it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Like Elon, for example, is a pilot. He used to fly some of the military stuff that I've flown, and he gave it all up because he's like, I can't do this and do this.
Yeah, and I can't give my time commitment to that. And
exactly.
Also this.
And do this safely, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I can't take people safely because it's too much risk, right? So it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice? If you're going to do all these things, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to concentrate? So I think that's my long-winded way of saying that's my biggest.
Okay. I respect that. People who are listening, we've alluded to that, you've read a lot more than me. I think maybe I'm almost at 100, but that's really been pretty proactive in the last few years with reading.
Oh, it's great. It's always good to start.
No, yeah. But if you could give like, I know you have your list online, but maybe outside of those, like if you had a top 3 and you have like that, you have like a top 10 and then all of the others, but like if you had a top 3, like that really you think could help people gain that kind of what we're saying, the semblance of overcoming self, you know, as we see that's a huge limiter and kind of to guide them forward towards a life.
One of them would probably be Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone's everyone's heard that book. And I mean, obviously that's like one of the greatest books of all time. Enlightenment Now, I think, is a really good one by Stephen Pinker. It just talks about, there's 76 graphs in the book. It shows, you know, all the things that we've been talking about, infant mortality rates, you know, life expectancy, wealth per capita, all these things that, you know, improve the overall quality of human existence have gone up and to the right over the last 500-600 years. And so I think if you read that, it gives you a sense of optimism. They're like, oh yeah, things are better now than they were before.
The world is better than you think.
100%. It is so much better than you think. I mean, look, there's a lot of darkness in the world for sure.
It always will be though. Like I think that's the cost of light and good to exist is dark.
Well, what's interesting, if you look at physics, for example, if you look at atomic particles, there's also antimatter, right? And when those two things collide, they destroy each other. And the only reason things exist, for every billion matter and antimatter particles that destroy each other, there's like one additional matter particle that we really don't have an explanation for. And that's the only reason that the universe exists. So maybe that there's literally light and dark embedded into the physical world from a physics standpoint. And we may never be able to completely remove that, but I do think that there is more light than people think.
Yeah. And then I think from a holistic standpoint, like if you look at it, like if you're religious or not, like, and you believe in God, I mean, I do. And so it's like, there's this conundrum Jordan Peterson has on it. And he says that like, God knew the world would be better with evil present. He knew that the world would be better off if there was hardship, if there was things that made you want to quit. Because if everything was just good, well, then that just becomes the state of being. There is not good or bad. That just becomes normalcy. Yeah. And so that life is better because there are hardships, because there are things that don't go your way, that you have to overcome, that you have to make a choice to continue onward. And that's what makes it feel as great when you do succeed and when you do accomplish it.
Yeah. I just, I've kind of thrown myself into seeing some like really hard suffering. Yeah. And I wish that the suffering, like I wish there was hardships. I think hardships are good. Yes. It kind of makes life more beautiful, but suffering is not good.
Suffering sucks.
And I think hopefully one day we'll eradicate, you know, there's like 10,000 human diseases. I think we have a solution for like 500 of them. Yeah. You know, we probably won't solve cancer in our lifetime, but there's just a lot of like really sad things that still happen to human beings. And I'm optimistic that, you know, things are going to continue to get better over time, but yeah, I hope that the suffering continues to go down because you really do see a lot of really hardships around the world.
You gave 2 books. You got one more.
Ooh, man. I mean, it just depends on what you want to read. I mean, like Shantaram is a really cool book about an Australian guy who escaped federal prison and moved to India and talks about the beauty of you know, there's extreme poverty in India. So India has about 1.5 billion people. The average person makes about $2,500 a year. But he's like living in the slums and he like learns to admire the beauty and the love of the people. And like, it gives you like a really cool view of humanity. And it's actually based on a true story, which is cool. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, like, I love books on, if you want a physics book, well, this one is extremely hard to read, but it's called The Beginning of Infinity by David Deutsch. Okay. That's probably one of the best books of all time. I had a friend of mine who studied under Stephen Hawking at Cambridge, and we talked for 4 hours, literally just about that book. And like, I had just met him through a mutual friend of mine, and we sat down, and he's like, oh yeah, you know, my friend told me he's like this big physics guy. And I was like, yeah, you know, I've studied physics for the last 3 or 4 years. He's like, oh yeah, cool. He's like, you know, what do you read? And I was like, oh, The Beginning of Infinity. And he's like, you could have said any book.
And yeah, you said that.
But he's like, you said the book. And so, yeah, that one's like kind of legendary in the field.
Very, very technical, heavy based.
Is that it's not technical. It's just, it's hard to like understand the concepts.
Level of complexity wise.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you're at this point right now, right? The people in Australia, their feet are actually like, they're upside down from you. Right. And you know, the earth is round and you know, the people are upside down in Australia, but it's like, it's hard to understand that. Like, even though you understand it, you're like, it's
consciously wrap your mind around it. Yeah.
And there are some mathematical principles that are pretty intense, but just from a conception standpoint, I mean, just really, really amazing book. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think biographies. I think the Lincoln biography is amazing.
I love the Lincoln biography.
The Last Lion about Winston Churchill was incredible. Yeah, I mean, I think biographies is cool. That's what Elon does. Is Elon just reads about a lot of people in the past, and
because history's bound to repeat, right? Like we're bound to make the mistakes that we've made before, unless we intentionally like make the effort to educate ourselves on how not to make them.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great. Obviously, there's a lot of great people in history who've done a lot of great things, and like really, I mean, everything that we're doing today is like we're standing on the shoulder of giants. So, understanding like kind of how they lived and like some of the adversity they went through, and also too, I mean, it gives you a lot of appreciation. Like you're like reading about Lincoln. He's like 12 guys to a hotel room. Like they're pushing the horse and carriage through, and he's like the tall guy, so he's like going through the river, like pulling stuff through. I mean, like they didn't have a hot shower until like what the 50s or something. Like I mean. All these people have done these amazing things. They've lived so much worse than we have. No vaccines were invented in 1796, but yeah, I mean, just like horrible.
Yeah, people with way less in way worse conditions have done more than you.
Yeah, so it's cool just to read the heroism. I mean, that's a cool. I mean, look, there's been a lot of darkness since the beginning of time, right? I mean, particularly the reason we study the conquerors is because there was no enlightenment, there was no history, there was no science being done. Now, if you look back, obviously, who are the people we admire? It's like the Benjamin Franklins, it's the Einsteins. Like we've kind of shifted from a historical perspective who we really admire, and I think over time that will continue to shift. But you just look at like what all these people have been through, and you're just like wow. I mean, it's really crazy, but it's also impressive. Like the heroes. Like you admire the hero's journey, and I mean that's a testament. There's a book called like The Man with a Thousand Faces. And it just pretty much talks about like the Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and Star Trek. All these stories are all the same foundational principle. It's the hero's journey. Like guy starts out, adversity, comes out, adversity again, then like achieves the dream, right? And it's just like going through that. And that's why I think people, again, entrepreneurship, all these things that we're talking about, it's like it's just that hero's journey. So yeah, there's so many like great. And then a lot of people they love fiction. I mean, I think fiction is great. The Foundation series is great. My friend
I struggle to enjoy fiction as much personally. Not that I mean, I've read some really good fictional things, but holistically as a whole, it's tough for me to like. I have to find maybe like anything. I have to find the relatability in it for me.
Yeah,
And I think that's where at least with someone's like we said about with a biography, I'm like, oh no, I'm already tying some level of relatability to even invest me this far to even start. But like with something fiction based, you're like, okay, like. I don't know. Maybe it's my over logical and analytical mind that plagued me there. Because I'm like, okay, feasibly, like, what the fuck is this? Like, who's even, like, I don't know. I think that's where I struggle. And like, again, I'm my own biggest pain in the ass in that way. But
it's so I think maybe 85 to 90% nonfiction, and then the cool thing about fiction is that with a lot of these books that you read in the past, now they've made movies about them, but There's still a lot of great fiction that there hasn't been a movie made, and so you can kind of get to create the own world and that world in your head.
And that's always so fun. Is like I read the Harry Potter books before the movies came out.
Yeah,
and I was like 11 when I first read. But there were only like 3 movies in, so like I read then 4, 5, 6, and the 7th one like without a movie.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed those way more than reading the first 3 with already seeing or knowing because you already have this picture painted for you of it. Versus like with the others, it was like. Yeah, I get to imagine the scene in my mind. Like you said, it stimulates that imagination function quite a bit, and is enjoyable. But
it's interesting. The question is how like is creativity a learned or trained thing that you can do, right? If you look at like over the great civilizations that have been the most innovative, like if you look at Florence, right? You look a lot of companies in Silicon Valley, their headquarters are structured to where you're constantly interacting with each other, similar to the European states, right? Yeah. And so.
They're trying to spark more
creativity, more ideas. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So that's an interesting concept. Is like maybe it's like an inherent thing in people, and you just have to bring it out. And maybe like a little bit of fiction does it, but look, everyone's different. I mean, what I find is interesting is like men are mostly, I would say 80-20 fiction and nonfiction. I mean, nonfiction to fiction.
So women are the
and then
inverse.
Women are the inverse. Yeah. Yes. Like every girl I know reads mostly fiction.
Loves their fantasy stuff and is like very like kind of like how we are with a lot like with autobiographies. Like someone I really like and care about. Like, Reba wrote a book. Okay, I'll read it. Like, all right, whatever. Fuck. Yeah. Okay. Moving. I got 2 more for you. One. Okay. And this is one we could talk for hours on anyway. But I know that you had made that post, and so I wanted to briefly touch on it because it's probably the one venture I'm the most intrigued about is the one about AI. That you're, you know, if you don't want to divulge too much about it, but I guess there's one. The question is, where do you see AI going, and kind of like what are your perspectives on it currently?
Yeah. So I have a digital automation company. I bought a software. There's a company in California raised $2.5 million. Not great at business, great at tech. I bought the tech asset as like a distressed asset.
Okay.
And then we put our own capital into it. Might actually sell it this month. So might do like, there's like a private equity company that's doing like an AI roll up, buying like smaller AI companies, rolling them up, and then trying to flip it.
Okay.
So might sell that one this month. But I think more so it's just with any kind of new technological advancement, right? It's like, okay, well, how, you know, with blockchain, it's quite interesting. You can use it with like some of the voting stuff, but like all these like crypto coins, I'm actually relatively bearish on because there's no use case. Now, obviously Bitcoin, 100%. I think will always do well. But a lot of these other ones, like my friend was the co-founder of Tether. Like I think that will probably continue to do well because it's like it's a stable coin.
Yep.
But a lot of this other stuff I think is not.
Yeah, there's no application.
Yeah, I definitely think we're in a tech bubble. Like if you look historically, the valuations compared to long-term averages, we're about double. We're actually the same valuations that we were in 2001. So if we do correct, it's going to be a very steep correction. But what happens is like the NASDAQ took about 16 to 18 years to come back to where it was in 2001, right? So we had this long correction. But it always comes back and then it rips way higher. And I think that will essentially happen now. I think there's probably over exuberance on AI and it will correct, but then I think 100%. It will over the next 5 to 10 years, like transform everything. But look, people are talking about AI and they just want to go out and build a pure AI company, right? Yeah. And they're like, if you look at like the models, you're not gonna be able to compete with these open AIs and people like that. I just invested in a robotics company in Houston, actually. They're doing more like industrial robots. So I thought that was cool. And it was 2 SpaceX guys.
Okay.
So they moved over. I'm very bullish on the tech. I think it's going to transform, but I do think it's going to take a little time. And I don't know if this one's going to be great for civilization. I am a little bit worried in the short term because I think what will happen is like, if I'm already seeing it, you need less lawyers, you need less marketers, you need less people in finance. So there's going to be starting to be a lot of job loss. And then the question is like, where do those people go? Because then if those other jobs are also taken by an AI system that has 160 IQ, like an Einstein or someone like that, where do you transition into, right? So people forget, in the Industrial Revolution in France and Britain, there was riots in the streets for quite a long time. And this will probably happen a lot faster. And look, I don't think these jobs are going to be taken away. I just think you're going to need a lot less of them.
No, 100%. So as someone who's very deep into like the engineering side of this, my caution to people, this is why who's the old CEO or the old CEO of Google, who's got this like fear mongered idea of AI. I think like anything has the capability to be really bad and structured and developed in the correct way. Like, yeah, there's a huge risk for AI. Like I can easily see how we get to the calamity of like, death and destruction and like AI taking over. Like, sure. But so far, one, we have no true smart AI. And what I mean by that from an engineering standpoint is like, if you gave a human 1/10 of the knowledge we've pumped into AI models, they would generate new ideas. No AI has generated any new ideas. They've elastically blasted out efficiencies and made processes faster. But true, like if I gave you 1/10 of the ChatGPT's like base core fundamental pounded data, like you would have you probably could have solved the cure to cancer if you mentally could, consume and then I don't know, like I don't even have words. It just pains me. It's like there's not this new generation of ideas.
Well, have you heard of Halcyon?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like an antibiotic or a resistant. I guess there's antibiotic resistant bacteria, right? And so it's like a new drug that counters that. It was actually made by AI by creating 2 combinations of things that like were not understood, like the human beings wouldn't have thought of combining.
Yeah, struggling to find the polarity between the.
Yeah, so if you look at most medical drugs, 90 to 95% of them are prescribed for reasons that they were not created for.
100%, yeah, because they found that it impacted them.
Yeah, because there's too much complexity. Like the human body is like 36 trillion cells, right? Yeah. There's too much complexity to really know all the different variables, and like there could be all these second and third order consequences of things that you do.
And then times the variation in each individual human, right? Like to assume that's why if we blast these vaccines that like for some people we see no risk and then we see like death on the other side for others. It's like because there's so much level of complexity. So I think in that area, again, it still is just ingesting current information and giving you because it can compute so much faster than you.
Yeah, exactly.
Giving you solutions that you would have arrived to if you had that capability of computation available to you.
For sure. Right. And I think that's what you're seeing is that the human brain is about 85 to 100 billion neurons, right? And then there's about 10,000 synapses. So it's like 100 quadrillion connections, right? If you can make if you can build AI systems, like obviously you're not getting anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
But like if you can kind of increase the complexity and keep adding compute power, maybe, I mean, the IQ testing that some of these models are testing out right now is like maybe 110, 115, but that's like a college level graduate, right? And then, okay, well, if you could get up to a 130, 140, 150, 160, I don't, you might be right. Maybe there's no new innovation that comes from it. Maybe they do unlock, maybe these things are unable to lock it. It's hard to say.
And especially, I think medicine is the biggest area where the most gains currently exist because we don't have the computation power to factor for all this. And we can't, again, because it's not, what the fuck's the word? It's not safe or, not what's the other word for like, it's not seen as acceptable. What's that proper medical word? Like, I don't know. But, like we can't go say, hey, like if I infect you with this thing, let's see what happens, right? Like trials like that are more frowned upon, right? They're not safe. Sure. And so, well, now we don't have to worry about like, oh, I killed this person. Like, well, AI can tell you what's going to happen, right? It can run the tests. It can do so I think we'll see the biggest swing and advantage and improvements in medicine with new medicines, new things, because again, we can litmus test for 320 million different variables simultaneously. And
there's a lot of jobs that are like really, you do the same thing over and over and over again with small variation.
Automation.
And so that will get automated. So look, I definitely think it's going to be good. And particularly when like robots start coming in and like everybody, you stop having to do the dishes, you stop having to wash your own clothes. You have a robot just do all that stuff for you. That will free up a lot of your time.
Yeah.
The problem is, so if you look at like 1920, 1930, the average person was working 60 hours a week. Now the average American works 34 hours a week, right? So you have an extra 26 hours a week. So, okay, you would think that maybe America would be more like Europe where they're spending more time going to dinners together, like these, like spending time together. No,
they're starting to do more.
Yeah, they're playing more video games. We're not going on dates. We're not hanging out with friends. We're becoming more isolated. And so say, okay, people want to free up more time. Okay, so say you have to work 15 hours a week, 10 hours a week.
More time may not get the theoretical idea versus the application. It's like, is more time really what we need?
Yeah. So then what are you going to do a lot of time? And also I think a lot of people find meaning in their work. And if a lot of your work is taken away,
where's your meaning?
Where's the meaning? Right? It's like everything's just handed to you all the time. So you just exist. I mean, that's going to be a whole different way.
Set of problems.
Yeah. That's going to be a whole different way of living. I do think we're probably 20 or 30 years away, but I think we'll see it in our lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree.
And, I've actually been to, I've been to like SpaceX and I've seen some of this new technology. I mean, it's not that far away. And my friend actually did the figure. He led the round in figure. They just did 500 million into figure. It's like a robotics company.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem like that's
so far off. Yeah.
So
it's closer than I thought it would be for right now. And again, I use AI every day, but again, as an assistant tool, like as a thing to be more productive and to get more out of my work, to make me, even with the stuff I'm trying to pursue on my entrepreneurial side, like it just helped me rapidly gain information that I would have had to go to 50 different people to get now.
Yeah.
Because I can gain that rough idea. Okay. And even if it's not 100% true to correct, it's like, okay, it gives me at least directionally correct idea so that I can make a next decision and make a next decision and make a next decision. So again, I think that's the main concept, like conceptual use now, even in corporate America. I mean, most companies aren't well ran enough to even though there is vast room for efficiencies. This is why I tell people, I work with an AI team at my current job, and like, we could vastly reduce our risk and all these other things here. But our systems, like there's the variation to then the way our data structure currently exists, to the way the process mapping, to the way the actual data is aggregated aren't one-to-one. Like the process is vastly different than the way the information comes in. We just then massage it to make it match, and so it's like to just turn an AI chatbot loose in your systems and like have it automate it. Like, well, you wouldn't actually get any better because it's too logically driven, right? It can't complexly enough think diversely yet to then just like automate your thing and do away with half your finance team or whatever. Like, because human error is still so prevalent and still baked into so many systems that the errors that are present will offset the potential calculation with the lack of like reasoning that's available.
For sure. And I think it's gonna be a long time before you take people completely out of the workforce.
Oh, for sure,
I think it's more so just if you had 50 people on a finance team, you might need 15 now. And like a lot of the grunt work can be done by automation.
No, yes.
And then you need 15 people to oversee it, check the errors, monitor it. Yes. Like kind of, it's more of like a management thing. Same thing. I compare it the same thing as like flying a jet, right? So like in a lot of these jets, particularly like Gulfstreams and like Bombardier, like Global Expresses, they have like pretty much the most advanced avionics in the world. So like the avionics I have, like the screens and all that stuff, way more advanced than a commercial airliner. Okay. Like it's like,
and why is that? But I'm
it's just like, it's all new, cutting edge, high end tech. Line. Yeah. Okay. And so like, I have a synthetic vision system. I see through clouds. I mean, it's like a Star Trek system, right?
Okay. Sure.
And so it's crazy stuff. Right. And so when I'm flying a jet like that, it's more systems management. Like the autopilot's flying.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay,
overseeing the system.
Yeah. I'm cool. I'm getting information from a human. I change the inputs, right? Okay, cool. I'm coming into land. I'm double checking, making sure everything's good. Cool. What are the weather systems? Okay. Maybe I do this instead of this. Yes. I mean, it's just, like the plane is flying 90.
Basically itself, essentially.
Yeah. I put on autopilot 400 feet after I take off, and I can take autopilot off 200 feet after I land. The rest of the time it's flying.
That's crazy.
And now I'm tweaking like the directions if we want to change it, but it's flying the whole way.
Yeah. You're adjusting dials and knobs, but it's doing the work.
Yeah. And so, and now with Starlink, I mean, you have direct, if you wanted to, like, I'm not saying you do this, but I'm saying like, if you wanted to, you could like be up there, like working, taking Zoom calls, like for like your company, while you're just, I mean, it's
half the time while you're at the cockpit. Yeah. Hold on. Oh, I got to adjust my whatever. Okay. I'm good.
By the way, I'm not saying I've ever done this, but I'm just saying,
didn't do that.
I'm just saying like you could. Yeah. But it's just, with automation now, you, essentially you're a systems manager. Yes. And so, what's interesting though about that is like counterpoint to what I'm saying is that, I would thought that they would have removed the second pilot because it's required on these planes to have two pilots. Now with so much automation, I would have figured they would have taken the second pilot out and just made it a single pilot plane. On the 700, they actually made it multi-HUD, which is super expensive. So they're actually replicating the main pilot with the second pilot to give him the same system. Okay. So they're actually increasing the investment on the second pilot rather than taking it away. Yeah. So it's hard to say. I mean, look, there's 6 million lines of code in that system. There's actually more lines of code in like a autonomous driving car. Are they going to completely take it out of a human out of the loop? I mean, Tesla's releasing a car in 2026 that has no steering wheel. So, I mean, they're pushing that boundary. I think
from a statistical standpoint, the only reason wrecks exist is because of human error. Right. Because, and like traffic is solely the effect of inconsistency in human practice. Like that's the only reason traffic exists. So if you've ever been in traffic, especially if you're from LA or Houston, like traffic exists because people are inconsistent. Because we have like, I'm driving at 55, you're driving at 54. Yeah. And so now I'm slowing down. And then so if everyone just did 75, it would just be the smooth line of like consistent traffic. So I think if you can get it all to, I'm a big Tesla fan and buy in on it and a huge Elon fan. So maybe that's my bias, but yeah, if you can flip the system all at once, this whole idea of risk is like, well, yeah, by removing the potential error creator, us, like, yeah, you could just have a smooth line of people doing 70 miles an hour at a safe distance. And again, because they're not interfering to fuck it up, like theoretically, where's the risk? So,
we talk about like hard work and like success and all that stuff. There's two people I've met that I'm like, they are legit just smarter than everybody. And I've met Elon and I met Sergey Brin, who founded Google. And when you talk to them,
you feel like an idiot, huh?
Yeah, you're like, okay,
that's what it's like to be the smartest person in the world.
Yeah, you won because you are just smarter than everybody. Like, I mean, there's a difference. It's you talk about statistics and standard deviations. Like there are multiple standard deviations above even people in the top 1 or 2% of intellectual capacity. Like these guys are
the best of the best, truly sharpest minds.
Yeah, like I was with Sergey, and David Blaine taught him a magic trick like 11 years ago, and he just remembered it and he just did it. And he's like, he taught me like one time, and I was like, you literally just did that perfect. Yeah. I mean, we have good memories, but like that's insane. To learn something one time,
see it one time and be able to replicate.
Yeah, and then you talk to him, and you just, it's just a different level, right? They were just born that way. But
I've listened to a couple of Elon on podcasts, and I'm like we said earlier, it's kind of like reading a very like complexly challenging ideas and things. You're like, hold on, like back it up. It's like we're speaking the same language and the syntax is the same, and I understand what you're saying, and I can like process it. I'm like, no, like I need to hear it again, because like, how did you just like mentally run through that many things that fast And though I can compute them, like it's I can feel the lag in my brain. It's like, it's not as fast as yours.
Yeah. Well, and then the domain knowledge, particularly because it's just like he's able to go into things and know them such at a base level, like on a physics level, first principles, right? He's able to do that. He's able to scale all these things because he knows it so well. It really is quite impressive. And when you talk to him, you can tell there's like 13 things going on in his head simultaneously at the same time.
Yeah.
And that
10 windows open all at the same time, running at max velocity.
Exactly. And so that's a unique,
and still all functioning equivocally as efficiently and powerful. Like no, there's no like drop off. Like he can switch to tab 5 and just like still just go.
Yeah.
At the
So
same
that's
pace.
sometimes, people like he was born that way. And like, that, so yes, there is some people who, they were like, gift. You were just going to win because you were just that smart. And,
it was just a matter of time.
You had all the intangibles, all that stuff, but like you were literally just that creative.
Yeah.
And so, there are some people like that, but I mean, look, you don't need 100 billion, 200, we're not talking, we're just trying to have like a good life, right?
Yeah.
So
he lives probably one of the simplest lives of anyone too. Like he
has a Gulfstream G700. So I mean, he's flying
but he's worth a couple $100 billion. So it's, like you said, your 10% rule, he's not even tapping on that.
Oh, no. Yeah. No, he just got the 700 this year, but I mean, super, super smart guy.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. It's 2 into 1 here on this. Looking back at everything you've done, like what advice would you offer to a younger version of you who was just starting out, or to any young entrepreneur facing setbacks and self-doubt?
The nice thing about life is that nobody remembers your failures. So so you can fail like all these people say this all the time. You only have to be right once. This stuff's always repeated, but it's so true. Like you can literally fail a bunch. And then if you succeed one time, everyone will tell you, oh, I always thought you were going to be successful. I have a friend of mine who has had 5 failed companies. And then on a 6th company, sold it for $4 billion, made $900 million at 40 years old. And it seems so obvious now that he was like going to be successful, but he lost a bunch of his friends' money. He failed a bunch of times. And he paid all his friends back, obviously, when he got the big exit, but it wasn't obvious. And then all of a sudden it was obvious. Now everyone thinks it's obvious.
You can't imagine an alternative.
Yeah. You can't imagine the alternative. So it's like, hey, it's okay to take shots. It's okay to have setbacks. It's going to suck no matter, like it sucks at failure. It sucks when you go up to a girl and you try to talk to her and she blows you off. Yeah, there's rejection is terrible all the time. It doesn't matter who you are.
It's the paradox of it only exists to you after that moment.
Correct. Yeah. And it's, again, I have multiple friends who, weren't the biggest ladies guys, right? Mm-hmm. They really struggled with getting, going on dates and things like that. And then all of a sudden they found one girl who was like beautiful and smart and cool and like an amazing wife, and they have like kids with her now. And everyone's like, man, that guy must have been a killer back in the day. Cause like his wife is like,
it worked out with one.
His wife is beautiful and like intelligent, has a great job, like multiple kids. He's like, man, I bet that guy was just crushing it the whole time. I'm like, no, actually I was friends with him he was failing all the time.
Never got a date.
Till her. Literally met her. His whole life changed and everything's great now. But it's like, it doesn't, it's okay to like have all these setbacks. And look, in life, you want to have some wins, right? Because you're just constantly getting kicked in the face. Like everyone's like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yeah, that's great. Like, but you need a couple things like
motivating. You have to have something to
it can't
generate that incentive to, okay, like I did win that once, right. So I could win again.
Right. And that's why I think having like kind of the balance of stuff is like, it's really hard for everything to be going bad, right? When I had my back infection and I couldn't walk, I still had friends checking up on me. My parents were there for me. Like, friends were there for me. I still had a lot of like really, positive things going on around me. Mm-hmm. And so, it was horrible. Like it was one of maybe the worst thing I've ever gone through, but having that like people around you like really helps. So I think as long as you have a good base and foundation, you can fail a bunch and it's like, okay. And that's what the cool thing about living in the United States is like, and we look at all these podcasts, what do they say? They have all these like venture capital people or business people and they go, invested in this, this, and this. They'll list like 3 companies that were wins, right? They don't list the 200 companies that didn't work. Like as a founder, they're like, oh, founder, like Bill Gates, like founder of Microsoft. Bill Gates' first company failed. Like, it's like no one lists the shit that didn't go right. Like,
you're noted and regarded for the thing that did work out.
Yeah. I mean, if like when I was doing my flight training, there were times where I'm sure that guy looked at me and was like, this guy might not make it.
This fucker's about to kill us if I don't fucking take over.
Exactly. There are times where you might look horribly bad. I mean, there's been some things where I've done that. I've looked horribly bad doing it, but then you just, just try it again. And, eventually you get there, but it's I mean, it's like everybody's going through it. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Like, you can be the smartest guy in the world. And Elon's company's almost failed like 3 times. Like Tesla's almost failed. SpaceX almost failed twice. Like there was a lot of times where, when Google first started, everyone thought it was like a bullshit company.
Yeah, they're like, whatever, this isn't going to work.
Yeah, everyone was like, oh, don't go work.
Now people are like, wow, it's obvious Google.
It was obvious. Yeah, everything was going to work. Yeah, it's
okay.
It's always obvious in hindsight. When Apple's first getting started, like it was not obvious. Like all these things were not obvious, right? Yeah. And a lot of people fail along the way. And like Steve Jobs failed. Like he got kicked out of his own company.
Started the company that he knew would fail, but just to show like, hey, I'm the thing. It's not you guys, it's me.
But then Next almost failed. And then he did Pixar, which he put almost all his money into. And then they had one hit. And then the rest of it was history. But there was a lot of times where that he looked like he was going to lose all his money. Mm-hmm. And so there's like all these things that you just constantly, it's like, okay, well, hey, you can be wrong a lot. And then just go ahead and just give it a shot. And don't beat yourself up on it. And it's like, hey, just because you failed 10 times, like that 11th time, you really can win. And that win can like change the rest of your life. So I think that's the most important thing is like knowing that everyone else is also struggling and having friends that you can have, like what you said, you like to talk to people who like really will open up to you and tell you like who they really are. Having that is like super important because if you're looking at Instagram and everyone's just like, on private jets and on these yachts and like doing all this crazy shit all the time, you're like, oh, well, my life sucks. This is terrible.
Nobody else is struggling.
Right. And then you start talking to your real friends. They're like, oh my God, that trip was terrible. Me and my girlfriend were fighting the whole time. Oh my God, my business is blowing up. Like, oh, cool. Like he's going through it just like I'm going through it. He just had a good week where, he's out with his friends, like hanging out. Like, it's, you need people there in the trenches with you, like understanding like, hey, life is hard. And if you find people that you'll go through it with you, hold on to them and cling for dear life because it is hard to find good people and it's hard to find good business partners.
Roller coaster, man. No, I told a good friend of mine and I, we had like a disagreement the other day over text. Like he had a perception that I was meaning something and I had a perception he was meaning something, and then it actually kind of got a little like not very nice there. And I was like, hey, like let's just call and figure this out because like that's not what I'm meaning. I'm telling you that's not what I'm meaning, but you're saying, no, you think I mean this. So like, let's just talk it out. And then anyway, we spent 3 hours on the phone catching up, and he's a friend that I'm insanely vulnerable with. And I'd shared with him that like the other night, I was like, man, I don't think I'm gonna do a podcast anymore. Like this shit's like, I don't want to do this. Like this is fucking hard. Like I'm tired of like, like you said, the Rogan thing, 5 years of no money. Like I'm almost a year in and $30,000+ invested. And like, I don't have shit to show for it except for, I have some videos on the internet. But like in the moment of like, I was tired. I've been, I'm trying to do this, like start up in my own thing and put time into that and then still work my corporate regular job and be a dad and then like do this. And it was just like in that singular moment, it was like, I just don't want to do this shit, And people always will tell me like, bro, you're just like, that's crazy. Like you must never just want to quit or give up on anything. I'm like, all the fucking time. What do you mean? Like I just like you said, like, I'm just like, okay, well, what would I do if I quit? Like, no, that doesn't sound as good as like, I should probably keep going. Even if I want to quit, like.
Well, one of the hardest things in life too is figuring out, like sometimes you should quit.
Yeah.
Like that's sometimes you're doing something that you should not do. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of people, like they quit something and then they do the next thing. And like I had a friend who this company was not going really well. And he's like, you know what? I'm done. Like I'm done. The next company he started
was a hit.
Yeah, it's worth $3 billion. Like, I mean, he made like $600 million in this company.
Yeah.
If he would have kept going on this first one,
he would
have missed this one.
Yeah.
So
there's the like you said there,
which is an insane. Think about the difference between those two. You're having a company where you're barely making it, and then you start something else, and it's like you become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world. Yeah. Like that,
and then like the bridge from the I quit and I'm a quitter. Did I make the right choice? And the doubt to like, then it's it. It's like, again, like we said, the hindsight's like, that was the right choice. But in the moment, you're like, you have no, exactly. It's like the what are the most certain lottery numbers? Well, the one that already won. Right. Like,
right.
Except for now the game you're playing, those numbers haven't been called yet. So you don't know.
And so that's the hard thing is knowing, like everybody quits in life because if you did everything that you did when you were a kid, you would still be doing it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm sure you did a bunch of, I did gymnastics when I was a kid. I'm not doing gymnastics now. Yeah. Like there's a lot of stuff you do.
I never thought I would run like I do now. I always was like, running's fucking, but now I'm like, dude, I can imagine not running.
Right. Exactly. So that the hard thing is understanding when to quit versus when to keep going.
When to fight to hold on.
Yeah. That's the
challenge.
Dude, that is so hard. And everybody struggles with that because it's like, okay, well, like you said, like a lot of times you're like, you could be right there and you don't want to quit too early. But then it's like, okay, well, then at a certain point, you also don't want to waste your life doing something that like, oh,
there's no gain in.
Exactly. You could be pivoting and doing something else. So
Yeah.
it's so challenging to figure all that out. And that's why you need good friends around you. Because
to be like, hey, no, it's not a lack of hard work. It's not a lack of effort. Like maybe this thing just isn't meant for you.
Yeah. So I have some good friends, and they like a friend was like Series B into Uber. My friend was a seed round into Uber, like invested like right when it got started. And they know Travis, the CEO, really well. And I was asking them, they were saying that Travis was doing a company before, and he was doing all these cold calls every day and like getting no traction, and like the company was like not doing that well. And his friends were telling him like, hey, you should really quit this. And he ended up like selling it for a small amount of cash. And then he went into Uber, which obviously did very well. So, sometimes when you're hyper competitive, you actually are being too competitive, because you're like, oh, well, no, I don't want to quit. I don't want to admit failure. I don't want to this. And then it prevents you from unlocking something else that's like a better path for you. So
I literally told my sister that this morning. She called me in some peril about some shit going on in her life. And I said, like when you're, whether it's with a partner or a business, whatever, if you're incessant on the wrong thing and holding on to it, you are blockading yourself from the right thing. You, not life, not scenario. Like you are the one limiting you from getting the business that's going to work, the partner that's actually going to be the one that's going to be the one forever. Like you're the thing that's limiting it by forcibly holding on, maybe being hyper competitive, or, hey, I don't want to be a quitter. And I know that's something I'm really bad at is it when I was younger, I was so willing to quit on things. I was like, oh, whatever, like I would just walk away so instantly. And so then it built kind of this, now I have this fear of quitting, even maybe at times when I should walk away. Because I'm like, well, no, I've quit so many times before, and now I have that I've allocated some space to like, I have regret and a space in my mind that's like, what could have worked out in these scenarios if you hadn't been such a quitter? And so that's made me very resilient and very tough and willing to work hard now. But I've also, again, faced the unintended consequences side of it, of where at times I've been like, I really should have walked away, and I knew I should have walked away X amount of time ago, and I didn't. And it costed me so much more by not walking away. Over the scheme of time, even just solely my time. Like that's the only thing I can't get back. Like I can make more money.
You talked about investment on like the investing in the equipment, all that stuff. I mean, look, you can write that off as a business expense, and you get 40% back, and then like you can write off against future earnings, and it reduces the amount of like a financial loss that you have in a certain venture. So there's a lot of like coverage there based on our tax system is really designed to like incentivize innovation and taking risk. But it's like the time thing, right? Yeah. And I've seen people, man, particularly like in relationships with significant others, I've seen people date for like 8 years. Like the guy was never going to propose to him, but he kept telling him like, I'm going to propose. So the girl was like 26, and then she wasted 8 years of her life with this guy. Damn. They ended up breaking up. And then she's like panicking because she's like, okay, now I'm 34, 35 and I have to start over. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it was probably obvious that you should have quit it. Like, 2-3 years in, but he kept stringing you along. So that's in a situation where this like don't never give up mentality can actually be a negative, because it's like, okay, well, you just burn like 5 years of your prime years to like start a family.
Yeah.
And so you should have given up. You should have thrown in the towel.
Well, there was clear, like you said, but usually there's clear signs of like, hey, like they're not going to do X. Hey, this business actually isn't going to work. Like there's indicators that maybe you're ignoring, but like you said, that's why you have to have the people there. Yeah. Who go like, hey, you're too vested in this because it's your thing. Yeah. But that thing actually isn't what you think it is. You're too close to it.
And sometimes you have to ignore the advice too. Like, I mean, sometimes, people will tell you, hey, don't do something. And then you end up doing it. It becomes a hit.
And it works.
Right.
Yeah.
So exactly. It's so hard to figure out. Like it's so hard. That's why you want time in the game. Because because it is so hard, there's so many variables that you can't control. The goal is just to stay in the game as long as you can, and then eventually the things will line up, and then boom, you have a hit, and then you're good. Yeah. But there's probably going to be a lot of things, because there's so many uncontrollable things in life, and so you just gotta stay.
Parts, unaccounted for, unimaginable variables that are gonna 100% enter the equation. So All right, and last one is if you could share a quote or piece of advice, something that maybe is altered the way you look at life or stuck with you, minus the one that you shared earlier. Is there any others that?
I don't know. Man, there's so many, but like, I always remember this one quote. It was like, our greatest glory in life is never failing, but rising every time we fall. And I think that's true. I mean, you just got to get back up. I mean, all these movies, again, it's the same hero's journey story, but just keep going. And life is hard sometimes, and just find people you really love that love you. And and, push the boundary. And I think having something that you're working towards and like working for, I think really helps you get past that point.
No, I agree. Here I have, where's mine? Shit. I have it right here. Today. I always try to give like a different one every time because I'm lame like that. And I enjoy trying to give people something engaging. Oh shit, it's not going to load. Motherfucker. I don't have Instagram on there. It's centered around the idea that like essentially it's a level of complexity that applies to the thing we want actually isn't always the thing we want, and so it's this, maybe you think you want money, but then you get money and then you realize like you're still just as broken and empty on the inside. Like, so that money actually wasn't the thing. Right. And now it's harder to get the sympathy and the support because now you're like, oh, like you're rich. Who gives a fuck? We have to be ungrateful about, right? Champagne problems. And so again, just putting a lot of emphasis on learning what you want. Like, what do you want? And again, like that's not an easy thing to know, but then again, you can work backwards from starting what you don't want or knowing what you don't want or what you're not interested in. And to get the outcomes of the life that you do desire.
Well, and like you said, maybe you don't know what you want. So I've lived in a very large house the last like 7 years in LA. It's insanely big.
Okay.
Like close to 20,000 square feet. And so you would think that would be like, oh my God, unbelievable. Like it's on like an acre in LA next to Beverly Hills. And so you're like, oh my God, it's like unbelievable. Right. And it is amazing. Like for dinner parties and hosting and all that stuff, you can fit 1,000 people in that house and like, it doesn't feel like it's super full.
Yeah. But the reality is the walk to your kitchen is just pretty far.
Right. Well, yeah. No, yeah. And also, I mean, but then when you're by yourself.
Yeah. It's so empty.
So
much
empty.
More alone.
So it's so much more home. It's super empty. It feels like this isolating feeling. It makes you it's ironic. It makes you feel really uncomfortable that you have all this space. And like, if you don't have like
someone to share it with.
Yeah. If you don't have like 9 kids in the house and like, it's just not, it's not full all the time. It's a very isolating thing. And so you might think that you want, and look, being in LA has some of the nicest and most amazing real estate homes in the world, right?
Yeah.
30, 40,000 square foot houses. And you're like, oh my God, this is like the dream, right? You have to like, sometimes you get that thing and then you're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And actually, like, to be completely candid, like, living in that size of a house, I don't think I will ever own a house now over 6,000 square feet. Like I want a smaller house because I think it's too isolated. Now, again, if I'm having all these like events and people over all the time, then sure, maybe you have a bigger place. But like, if I'm just raising a family, I'm actually doing a smaller, even though I have like 4 kids, I want to cram people in. Because it is so isolating. And like, I think big homes destroy families and like, being in these, it's kind of like a weird feeling. And again, the reason I brought that up is just, it sounds so amazing. You're like, oh my God.
Yeah. The appeal is there.
Yeah. Like, oh, it's incredible. But then you're doing it. You're like, no, this is too much. It's just too much house. It's too much work to keep it up. And it feels more like a job to have it than you're actually enjoying it. And then so it's like this thing that people probably would work their whole lives to get.
Just to get there and be like, it actually didn't do what I thought it would do.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you have it and then it's like, oh wow, this actually makes me feel worse because it's so big.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, sometimes you don't even know what you want, but again, if you work really hard and you achieve your dreams, then you can just sell that house and you can go buy another house. So it's like, you can pivot. Once you achieve a certain level, you can just pivot whatever you want. So the goal is just like work, achieve the things that you want to achieve. And then if you don't like what you're doing, then you can just change it. Right. A lot of things are liquid, right? If you buy a boat, you don't like it, you can sell it. If if you're going out to these restaurants, you don't like it, you can stop going. Like you can always change the decision process. And very few things are like a one-way door. Like who you have kids with.
That's a
one-way door, right? That's maybe
everything else is so dynamic.
Like you can start a company, you don't like it, a year later you can quit and you start something else, right? Who you have kids with is probably the most important decision. That is like the one-way door. 100%. But everything else is two-way. So it's like, okay, cool. If I do this, this was what I thought, sell it, move on. Like you can just change things. So just it's like just keep working, keep pursuing. And maybe sometimes the things that you want, you actually really don't want. It just sounds nice. Yeah. Like it sounds nice to have all this stuff. And then you have all this stuff. You're like, all this stuff is making me absolutely miserable. And I've known so many people who've had all this stuff and they just like liquidate everything. And they move to Costa Rica and they live on the beach and like, they just live in like a 2-bedroom house. They're like, honestly,
this is it.
I'm done.
Yeah.
So, it's just, but again, you can pivot, just, go for the thing that you think you want.
Yeah. Definitely. Man, I appreciate you. We went for quite a while. So.
Oh, we did? I don't even know what time
bro,
it is.
I appreciate you. And thank you so much for making the time, man. I look forward to future conversations and things.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you.